every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Morning, 9:30 on Monday, the 29th of January. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Very good morning. Are we on the brink of World War III? Well, that's the warning from Donald Trump as the US President Joe Biden vows to retaliate after 3 US service personnel were killed in an Iran-backed drone attack.
And we're going to get a disposable vape ban. You may have heard this before, but the Prime Minister will say today they're going to be outlawed to protect children's health. It's part of his plan to phase out smoking. The Health Secretary, Victoria Atkins, told GB News this.
And we are going to be bringing forward a prohibition on disposable vapes because we know those are the vapes that children tend to use. Some 69% of children use disposable vapes. And not only are they a gateway to nicotine addiction, of course, we know also they litter our streets.
Another small boat surge. GB News understands that 350 people crossed the channel in small boats over the weekend. That's over 1,000 people so far this year. Our political editor, Christopher Hope, has more.
Yes, 1,000 more arriving in small boats so far this year. That's why the Rwanda plan works. It's back in law today. Let's see what they have planned for it.
And does pavement parking drive you nuts? Edinburgh and Liverpool councils are coming down hard on people who park on the curb. Is this issue a bugbear of yours? If so, tell us all about it.
And Mona Lisa vandalised. Environmental activists threw pumpkin soup, interesting choice, on the world's most famous painting on Sunday. They did so calling for the right to healthy and sustainable food.
What did the pumpkin soup do to deserve that? That would have been better used feeding people who are poor
Honestly,
and homeless. Pathetic.
They are ridiculous, aren't they? Right, get involved this morning. gbviews@gbnews.com is the email address to discuss that and a lot more between now and midday. First, though, the very latest news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Thank you and good morning. Your top stories from the GB Newsroom. The Foreign Secretary has condemned an attack which killed 3 American troops in Jordan. A drone strike targeted a US base in the northeast of the country yesterday. Blaming Iranian-backed militants, President Biden has vowed to hold those responsible to account. Tehran has denied any involvement. The attack has fuelled fears of a wider conflict in the region. Lord Cameron has urged Iran to de-escalate tensions. Former chairman of the Defence Select Committee, Tobias Ellwood, says the world is at war, but that doesn't mean it'll lead to World War III.
This is an example, as you were describing, of how instability continues to expand and escalate in the Middle East with more and more nations and non-state actors, some of these militant groups in Iraq and Syria participating as well. So we're all going to watch very carefully what the United States response will be. A lot of pressure domestically, don't forget. It's an election year too. Republicans are calling for something very robust, but it has to be measured as well, because otherwise there could be a risk of miscalculation, a risk of escalation.
A special review has been ordered into the NHS Trust, which treated the man who killed 3 people in Nottingham. Valdo Calicane was given a hospital order after a court heard he'd been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. The 32-year-old stabbed Barnaby Webber, Grace O'Malley-Coomer and Ian Coates last June and tried to kill 3 other people with a van. The families of the victims are now questioning the care he received. 2 teenage boys fatally stabbed in Bristol have been named locally. A vigil was held last night for 15-year-old Mason Wrist and 16-year-old Max Dixon, who were attacked by a group of people on Saturday night. A 44-year-old man and a 15-year-old boy have been arrested as part of a murder investigation. They remain in custody. Disposable vapes are set to be banned in Britain. The Prime Minister will announce the crackdown following a rise in the number of children using the devices. Rishi Sunak's also expected to unveil new powers to restrict flavours to make them less appealing to young people. It's understood the ban will come into force within the next year. The Rwanda bill returns to the House of Lords, with the country's safety again being questioned. The second reading follows a busy weekend for Border Force officials. GBNews understands around 350 illegal migrants crossed the Channel, taking the total to over 1,000 people so far this year. The Archbishop of Canterbury, who's raised concerns about asylum seekers on small boats being sent to Kigali, will be among those expected to address peers later today. And in some breaking news, police are trying to trace a mother after a newborn baby was found dead in Leeds. The child was discovered in the toilets of the Three Horseshoes pub in Alton yesterday. West Yorkshire Police is concerned for the mother's welfare and is urgently appealing for help in trying to find her. You can get more on all of those stories by visiting our website, gbnews.com. Now back to Andrew and Bev.
Very good morning to you. Me and Andrew Pearce here. We've got David Davis waiting in the wings. We're all nattering as usual before we come on air. Hope you had a lovely weekend. So, are we at risk of World War III?
Former President Donald Trump thinks so after 3 American soldiers were killed by drone strikes in Jordan, strikes that Iran, of course, denied they had anything to do with.
Our Defence Secretary Grant Shapps warned that we are moving to a pre-World War era.
And last week, of course, the head of the British Army said we should be prepared to be for conscription, ready to fight Russia.
That's right. And earlier, the former chairman of the Defence Select Committee spoke to GB News.
Instability continues to expand and escalate in the Middle East with more and more nations and non-state actors, some of these militant groups in Iraq and Syria participating as well. So we're all going to watch very carefully what the United States response will be.
See, I can just hear a lot of sort of hawkish warmongering from a lot of men that seem to be getting quite libidinous about this idea that we're heading towards World War III. And I think there are a lot of mothers at home dealing with teenagers who are seeing these things about conscription all over TikTok and all over social media. The kids are terrifying. Can we just dial it down, please, at the moment?
Well, there's an election in the United States, and that's going to be a big factor. There's going to be a lot more war talk from Trump and Biden will respond in some form to what's happened in Jordan.
And there's definitely, you know, Donald Trump was there on interviews over the weekend saying, you know, we didn't have any wars when I was president. And he's got a point, because sometimes it takes the crazy, unhinged, unpredictable types like Putin and Kim Jong-un to be kept at bay by another crazy and unhinged and unpredictable type.
Are you talking about Donald Trump? The next president of the United States?
It might seem mad, but I think there's some truth in that.
Let's talk to somebody who's not crazy or unhinged, or it wasn't last time I spoke to David Davis. David, there is all the fact we have got an election in the United States, and we've got one here, of course. Yeah. It's going to feed into this rhetoric, isn't it?
It is, but that being said, I think he's got a point.
Right.
To be frank, I mean, I woke up about 4 or 5 weeks ago and thought exactly the same thing. In fact, it was Trump's election being announced or his winning of his primary being announced on the Today programme, and I thought, you know, I've never known in my adult life a time when the world's so unstable. And bear in mind, I've lived through Cuba, you know, the Cuban crisis. I was at parachute school when the Russians invaded Czechoslovakia. I thought I was going to be dead in 3 months. I mean, you know, so there's been a lot of times in the past. And the thing always to remember about all of this, however, is that world wars happen despite predictions, not because of them. They happen when things just go wrong in the wrong way. So you've got today the deaths of those American soldiers in Jordan, by Iran. You've got the Houthis, Iranian sponsors.
Why are they bombing Americans in Jordan? I mean, what's that got to do with it? Is it just to create instability?
Yes, I think it is. I think Iran basically wants the more instability possible in the Middle East, because they're Shias. They want to increase the arc of Shia domination. Bluntly, we fed into that with the Iraq War. The last Iraq War made it easier, and they're still turning this wheel to try and make more and more instability. Now that's got all sorts of dangerous knock-on effects, as you say, in an election year. How are the Americans going to respond to this sort of thing? Are they going to dial it up? Are they going to make it? Are they going to hit back? In which case, you can see it going up another notch. So I think there's a point, and you're right about the war hawks, the sort of war horses like me. But they've got a point too, and their point is this: that after the fall of the Soviet Union, we claimed, quotes, the peace dividend. I always think it's a terrible metaphor. Actually, a better metaphor was we cancelled the insurance because we thought the house wouldn't burn down. Unfortunately, houses do burn down, and our army's too small. The whole of NATO is too small now to stand up to an attack. And what stops wars? The other side thinking they won't win. That's what stops.
And David, we know they could be here already, but it's been widely reported, it's in the papers again, that we're going to have American nuclear missiles back on our soil in Suffolk anytime soon. Far more powerful than the bombs that we were used to destroy Nagasaki and Hiroshima.
Hundreds of times, absolutely. And but
is that good?
It probably is the right thing. I mean, look. During, back when I was younger, when I was involved in these things, they used to talk about mutually assured destruction. Which, of course, the acronym for that is MAD. And it seems mad, it feels mad, but it actually gave us 50 years of stability. After the Second World War, when everybody had these weapons. Terrible thing, but nobody's going to press the button because, actually world leaders, even if they're Putin or Trump, don't want to die themselves. That with the consequence of a nuclear war. They might send young men off. I mean, leaders of all sorts, from Putin to, I don't know, pick your own prime minister, do send young men off to war, but it's not very risky for them.
Were you surprised this week by the reaction with this public debate that started around the notion of conscription of young people, and how much pushback there was, and how much it kind of raised awareness of the fact that we've raised a whole generation to view our sort of empirical past as bad and as war as bad, and also this sense that we've got this generation of individuals who, to some extent, are a little bit narcissistic. The idea that they will selflessly give their life or go and murder somebody else on behalf of a prime minister they don't feel connected to. It really brought it into focus for me.
Yeah, but the issue here is, will we be forced to it? That's the problem. Not that we want to do it. I mean, there are nations in the world. I mean, Sweden's just reinstated a form of conscription, social service and/or conscription. Switzerland has got conscription. Neutral nations, by the way, up until recently anyway. And Switzerland had a survey, I think last year, in which 73% of their population wanted to continue with conscription. So gives you a measure. But what we have to do is find another way of improving our ability to defend ourselves. And what, for me, that means probably is, massively increasing, like 10 times increasing the number of reserve forces.
Because they're depleted to the point of hardly having any.
There were about 30,000, I think. I mean, it's all 20,000. It's tiny. And, bear in mind, they only cost a quarter of what a regular soldier costs.
But also diplomacy. Like, this is the one thing that's missing from a lot of this conversation around war at the moment is the idea that we've given up on diplomacy with some countries. We just don't bother now. We've all just got a tool up and just make them think we're bigger than them.
No, I mean, diplomacy is important. I used to be a Foreign Office Minister. Diplomacy is massively important. But if you've got no force, you won't be able to exercise any diplomacy with the leaders of Russia, Iran, China, and so on. I mean, diplomatic activity will not stop the Chinese invading Taiwan. The fear of American response to the Chinese invading Taiwan. That's been the case for decades. And, that's, for me, that's the biggest frightening thing, a slightly bonkers leader of China.
Who's very ambitious.
Very ambitious. And, of course, it's a tradition. It's been going on. They've claimed it ever since the creation.
And I can hear our viewers at home going, well, if they do, it's got nothing to do with us. That's to do with China and Taiwan.
I mean, look, if your viewers at home perhaps should read the history of the First World War, which started with one man being assassinated.
Archduke
spread
Ferdinand.
right across, and even a year before, our British statesmen saying, if there is a war, we don't need to get involved. Well, look what happened.
Yeah.
One of the worst wars in
Ever.
Stay with us, David. Moving on to things a little closer to home at the moment. Disposable vapes, they're set to be banned in Britain as part of plans to tackle the rise in young people vaping and to protect children's health.
It's part of the Prime Minister's plans, which he's going to talk about today, to phase out smoking. The Tory MP Liz Truss, she was our Prime Minister for 49 days, says it's an unacceptable extension of the nanny state.
But new data shows the number of children vaping in the last 3 years has tripled. Joining us now is the Director of the UK Vaping Industry Association. Very good morning, Dan Marchant. Good morning to you, Dan. This is great news, isn't it, that we're going to be banning these disposable vapes at the very least?
Good morning. I wouldn't say it was great news, personally. Of course, I think I should start out by saying, of course, children shouldn't be getting their hands on any type of vape, be it a disposable or a refillable vape. That in itself is a problem. And of course, we'd support sensible measures to prevent youth access. But unfortunately, I think just an outright ban doesn't sort of take into the nuance of the situation and could have some really, really negative unintended consequences.
Such as what?
Well, they are probably the most successful smoking cessation product that's on the market at the moment. And there's 1.5 million adults currently using them to improve their health. And actually, research from UCL came out last week, which says that they're particularly worried it could cause, I think, 1.2 million adults to relapse back into smoking, which obviously would be a public health disaster. But also, we've already got a really huge and thriving black market in the UK. And of course, without active and effective enforcement, there's a real danger that we'd be just pushing consumers, and unfortunately, children will also be able to use the black market, because if these people are willing to sell an illegal product, unfortunately, there's a big correlation that they're also willing to sell them to our kids, which is outrageous.
But, Dan, they're already using the disposable vapes, that's what we know. And, of course, vaping has been great to try to woo people off cigarettes and nicotine, but it's also drawing hundreds of thousands of young children into vaping in the first place. That is not good. It's a gateway to tobacco. It's a gateway to all sorts of other issues.
Well, no, it's absolutely not good, but I don't think just banning the product is the solution. Like I say, there's already a large black market for the disposable vapes. Just saying that they're banned won't get rid of that.
OK,
actually,
so here's
what we've been trying to engage the government with for years now is to introduce a retail licensing scheme, which actually would then create a huge amount of funding for trading standards to be able to go out and do proactive enforcement of the age laws, because it's already illegal to sell these products to children. And so really, I think the outrage needs to be focused on the retailers, criminals.
Well, there's a solution to this, Dan. There's a very, very easy solution for this. If it is genuinely a medicinal product to help people quit smoking, it should be prescription only. You should be able to maybe get it from your pharmacist to make it easier, because you can't get an appointment with the GP anyway. Pharmacists and GPs get it on prescription, and then it will do what you're talking about, and it won't be available next to the sweets in every shop on the high street.
I understand, but there's a few negative points with that. One, I don't think your GP is going to be overly happy about having to give out 4.7 million appointments to the current adults that are using vapes. It would be a huge strain on the NHS. You don't need a prescription to go and buy Nicorette or gum or patches. You don't need a prescription to buy cigarettes. So actually, we shouldn't be creating undue barriers to a smoker that is looking to switch, because all we're going to do is exacerbate the problem of smoking, which, as we know, kills 220 people a day in the UK.
OK, thank you, Dan. Dan Marchant there from the UK Vaping Industry Association.
David Davis Stewart, have you ever smoked, David?
No.
No, you're far too healthy.
Not a cigarette.
Let's not go.
We won't press you on that.
Or anything else. Or anything else.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah. You and I have known each other a long time. Of course, vaping is very helpful for people to get them off fags, but we know it is getting hundreds of thousands of kids into vaping, and it's designed to do that.
by the way, I should just say at the beginning that, being lectured on what's conservative by Liz Truss...
Yes, I wondered what you thought
probably
about
got Margaret Thatcher spinning in her grave.
Yes.
Because Margaret was always clear, common sense first.
Yes.
And here you've got something which, on the one hand, has a health benefit. I don't agree with prescription, by the way. That's too intrusive, but there are better ways. Has got a health benefit. On the other hand, is a dangerous entry drug almost.
Of course it is.
And that was a little bit, how can I say, disingenuous from the leader of the trade association.
He's making money out of it.
Of course. Because some of these vapes are obviously designed for children. Look at the flavours, look at the colours.
They've got Elf and Geek bars. Elf and Geek. I mean, they are aimed specifically
children branding.
at children.
Yeah. So I think I got a lot of sympathy with what Sunak's trying to do, and I think we'll debate the detail when it comes to the House. But I think if somebody had taken an attitude like this to smoking 50 years ago, there'd be a lot of people still alive today. And so that's where we are. And just saying, oh well, it's unconservative, is just bonkers.
It's I would just want to press you on that, the prescription issue, to some degree, because do you remember when they first arrived on the scene, vapes, and it was a celebration that they were going to get people off cigarettes, and it was wonderful and fantastic, and they have done a good job of that. But all they've done is introduce a whole generation of kids to nicotine who wouldn't have liked to smoke a cigarette, but they quite like a watermelon flavour vape that they can puff on.
It's cool to vape.
In the toilets of the school, and the school can't smell it, the parents can't smell it. Prescription only, David?
No, I don't think so. What I don't agree with is this line, oh, well, it'll create a black market. I mean, you maybe got to move them to being sold, like cigarettes, behind the counter, not in front of the counter. So you basically repress the marketing campaigns. But don't let the best be the enemy of the good, And we don't... in that respect, I would agree with Truss. You don't want more natty state than you need to have. What you do is want to precisely, as close as you can get to precisely the right amount of control. That is telling them they can't market on the front, they can't do away with disposables, and make a very severe criminal offence to sell it to children. Very severe.
David, you wrote, rushing a lot of things out, you wrote a very interesting piece in the Telegraph at the weekend saying bring out of retirement Supreme Court judges to deal in 3 months with all these cases for the Post Office, sort out the compensation, but that would also potentially catch the handful who may have actually been pinching money.
It started with a telephone call to me from one of the postmistresses saying, I don't want to be declared innocent
in a group. I agree with that.
We started off, I don't want a royal pardon.
She wants to be cleared specifically, doesn't she?
She said, I was convicted in the court. I would want to be exonerated. Now, she's actually been exonerated, this one, but I want to be exonerated in the court. And of course, everybody said, oh, well, it can't be done, it takes too long. Well, the judges have got a responsibility here too. I mean, they were part of this massive miscarriage.
They were.
Some of them were very honourably on the right side, but they were part of it, so they should actually adjust. And all it takes, 3 retired. You've got lots of Supreme Court judges who've retired. Find 3 who are still compos mentis, still smart. Give them a court room and say, here you are, 3 months. And bear in mind, the vast majority of them will be very simple because there'll be horizon-only evidence. If it's horizon-only evidence, then it's a clear-cut case. If there's one of the complaints to one of the law officers to me was, oh, but the Post Office have lost the files. I said, well, in that case, it's very simple. Innocent till proven guilty. If you've got no files, they're innocent. So then you're left with a small number where, did they nick the pension? That sort of thing, because otherwise, your newspaper in a year's time is saying this person stole somebody's pension and got £600,000 tax burden. Well, you don't want that either, do you? So I think it's doable. We're going to have a row about it, obviously, an argument about it. If the government won't go with it, then I'll support their current proposal. But this is better.
And the chairman of the Post has been sacked by Kemi Badenoch, Henry Staunton. He shouldn't get a penny payoff, should he?
No, he shouldn't. No, he shouldn't. I mean, look, there's become a habit. Actually, even with ministers, Nadine Dorries yesterday had to give back whatever it was, 17,000. I'm astonished we keep giving people redundancy payments. When they're not redundant, they're fired.
Because it's no good.
If I were fired, I wouldn't expect a redundancy payment. Actually, when I resigned as Secretary of State, I didn't get redundancy. I'm too old.
So no money for the Post Office chairman.
No money for the Post Office chairman. I think if you are if you're dismissed, You know, it's not payoff time. It shouldn't make your bank happy.
We need to end it there, David, unfortunately. Never long enough. Now, still to come this morning, it's been a hard start for the year for pubs because this January has been the driest ever. You won't believe how many people have given up booze this month alone.
Not Beverly Turner.
Not us. You, David Davis?
No.
No, none of us here. This is Britain's Newsroom.
I broke it with David Davis.
We're the fun group on GB News, the People's Channel.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. We've got a three-way split across the UK today. Frosty start in the north, wet across Wales, northern England, cloudy in the south. And we can see that nicely on the chart for the rest of the day. The rain really set in across parts of Wales, northern parts of the Midlands into northern England right through the day, turning increasingly heavy as we move into the afternoon. Sunny skies for Northern Ireland, much of Scotland. It will be hazy sunshine here. A chilly day to come here. Across the south, mild but rather cloudy. Some brighter breaks allowing temperatures to lift to around 14 Celsius. In the north, around 7 to 8 Celsius generally. Into the evening time, the rain continues across parts of Wales, northern England, but it just slowly starts to push its way into the North Sea. Clear skies across Northern Ireland and Scotland will allow temperatures to fall below freezing here and a patchy frost to form. Met Office warnings for rain last right through the night, so there could be some tricky driving conditions if you are travelling through into Tuesday morning. Temperatures under the cloud and the rain generally holding up well above freezing. So a great start for England and Wales. Outbreaks of rain and drizzle continuing to slowly push away eastwards. Frosty, sunny start for Northern Ireland and Scotland. Here it will stay dry for much of the day. Elsewhere it slowly starts to brighten up from the west, but generally staying cloudy and temperatures a little lower than they have been. 9, 11, 10, 11 Celsius in the sunshine, 7 or 8 further north.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Up next, lawless Britain. 2 teenagers, just 15 and 16, died in a stabbing attack, this time in Bristol, and there was violence at a football match in the West Midlands. How did the police take back control?
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024 GB News is Britain's election channel. Come and join me this Thursday in Scunthorpe live by scanning the QR code or going on gbnews.com to get your ticket for the event. We'll be discussing things like why the Green Agenda is risking jobs in places like Scunthorpe.
Good morning, it's 10 o'clock on Monday the 29th of January. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Bev Turner, and Andrew Pearce.
Are we on the brink of World War III? That's the dire warning from Donald Trump as US President Joe Biden vows to retaliate after 3 US service personnel were killed in a drone attack, which Iran denies any responsibility for.
And disposable vape ban. They're going to be outlawed to protect children's health. It's part of the Prime Minister's plans to phase out smoking. The Health Secretary, Victoria Atkins, spoke to GB News earlier today.
And we are going to be bringing forward a prohibition on disposable vapes because we know those are the vapes that children tend to use. Some 69% of children use disposable vapes. And not only are they a gateway to nicotine addiction, of course, we know also they litter our streets.
Another small boat surge. GB News understands 350 illegal migrants crossed the channel in small boats over the weekend. It's now over 1,000 people already this year.
And Bristol stabbing, another case of lawless Britain. 2 teenage boys, aged 15 and 16, died this weekend after a stabbing attack by a group of people who fled the scene in a car on Saturday afternoon. South West of England reporter Jeff Moody has more.
Yes, tragedy here on the streets of Bristol. The community now trying to come to terms this morning with what happened at the weekend. 2 teenage boys stabbed to death on the streets of their hometown. I'll have a full report a little later in the programme.
Another family destroyed.
Awful.
More families destroyed. I saw the mum of Barnaby, who was killed in... Mum and dad of Barnaby was killed in Nottingham last summer. I mean, they are just destroyed, the pair of them. Trying to keep going, they're going to campaign, they want an inquiry, they don't want it to happen to anybody else, but it's senseless, isn't it?
Absolutely. We said it was a weekend of violence, didn't we? At the football as well. We're going to be talking about that. That's unusual. GBViews at gbnews.com is the email address for all of your thoughts as well this morning. But first, in the GB Newsroom, here's Tatiana Sanchez.
Bev Turner, 2 minutes past 10. Your top stories from the GB Newsroom. The Foreign Secretary has condemned an attack which killed 3 American troops in Jordan. A drone strike targeted a US base in northeast of the country yesterday. Blaming Iranian-backed militants, President Biden has vowed to hold those responsible to account. Tehran has denied any involvement. The attack has fuelled fears of a wider conflict in the region. Lord Cameron has urged Iran to de-escalate tensions, which the Prime Minister has echoed today. Former chairman of the Defence Select Committee, Tobias Ellwood, says the world is at war, but that doesn't mean it'll lead to World War III.
This is an example, as you were describing, of how instability continues to expand and escalate in the Middle East with more and more nations and non-state actors, some of these militant groups in Iraq and Syria participating as well. So we're all going to watch very carefully what the United States response will be. A lot of pressure domestically, don't forget. It's an election year too. Republicans are calling for something very robust, but it has been measured as well, because otherwise there could be a risk of miscalculation, a risk of escalation.
A special review has been ordered into the NHS Trust, which treated the man who killed 3 people in Nottingham. Valdo Calicane was given a hospital order after a court heard he'd been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. The 32-year-old stabbed Barnaby Webber, Grace O'Malley-Coomer and Ian Coates last June and tried to kill 3 other people with a van. The families of the victims are now questioning the care he received. 2 teenage boys fatally stabbed in Bristol have been named locally. A vigil was held last night for 15-year-old Mason Wrist and 16-year-old Max Dixon, who were attacked by a group of people on Saturday night. A 44-year-old man and a 15-year-old boy have been arrested. As part of a murder investigation, they remain in custody. Police are trying to trace a mother after a newborn baby was found dead in Leeds. The child was discovered in the toilets of the 3 Horseshoes pub in Alton yesterday. West Yorkshire Police is concerned for the mother's welfare. It's urgently appealing for help in trying to find her. Disposable vapes are set to be banned in Britain. The Prime Minister will announce the crackdown following a rise in the number of children using the devices. Rishi Sunak's also expected to unveil new powers to restrict flavours to make them less appealing to young people. It's understood the ban will come into force within the next year. Health Secretary Victoria Atkins says the government wants to create the first smoke-free generation.
None of us think that children should be vaping, and yet the evidence is emerging very quickly that over the last 3 years, for example, the number of children that have taken up vaping has trebled. Some 69% of children use disposable vapes. And not only are they a gateway to nicotine addiction, of course, we know also they litter our streets.
Director General of the UK Vaping Association, John Dunn, criticised the government's move as a stunt.
I really think they're throwing the 4.6 million vapers under the bus as a cheap publicity stunt to get votes. Now, vaping is the most successful way that people quit smoking in the UK. It's twice as effective as all others. And really, the people that they're throwing under the bus here are those people who have the least amount of income in the highest smoking areas during a cost of living crisis.
The Rwanda bill returns to the House of Lords today, with the country's safety again being questioned. The second reading follows a busy weekend for Border Force officials. GB News understands around 350 illegal migrants crossed the English Channel, taking the total number to over 1,000 people so far this year. The Archbishop of Canterbury, who's raised his concerns about asylum seekers on small boats being sent to Kigali, will be among those expected to address peers later. And West Bromwich Albion could be sanctioned after violent scenes and disorder took place against rivals Wolves in the FA Cup last night. Fans spilled onto the pitch after fights erupted in the stands during the Black Country Derby, halting play for more than half an hour. There were reports of fans clashing with police, and 1 person was taken to hospital with head injuries. 6 people were arrested, and officers have vowed to make further arrests in connection with what they've described as unacceptable violence. And forecasters are warning large parts of the UK will see what's being called a 3-way split in weather today. The Met Office has issued a yellow rain warning for large areas of northern England from midday until tomorrow morning. It's also said a band of rain stretching from the Scotland to southwest England will keep temperatures mild. That's after much of the country experienced its warmest January, with temperatures reaching 19 degrees in Scotland. Those are your top stories on GB News across the UK on TV, in your car on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Now back to Andrew and Bev.
Very good morning, 10:07. Thank you for getting in touch with us this morning about the situation brewing potentially in the Middle East. Obviously, we've had these strikes on American soldiers via Iranian militia. Iran is denying it. Paul has said, we keep hearing about our prisons are overflowing and our armed forces are run down. Instead of sending 18-year-olds to prison at the taxpayers' expense, we should put them in the armed forces for a couple of years. I think that is actually, I have to say, I do think that is a fantastic idea. Richie says young people will not be going to war war to fight for a Prime Minister that they don't like or support. I believe that all 18 to 20-year-olds should do 2 years conscription, which would teach them discipline, which would be much needed today.
And Robin says, when faced with a pressing need to bolster military defence for the UK and its people, conscription becomes crucial. It's the citizens who must step forward to safeguard the nation. While conscription may seem unlikely, instilling the awareness in all individuals they might be called upon to defend their country is essential. It's been a great talking point, because we did this on the programme last week, didn't we? Before the General, the head of the Army, made his speech, and it's been running for a week.
Yeah, it has, because it's also terrifying all the young people out there, and terrifying parents of young people, that we're saying, over my dead body would you take my children to fight your stupid war? When the politicians first on the front line in their boots, fine. Until that point, no. Helen says a majority of the corner shops is about vapes, selling vapes. I see going to children in and out. You're so right,
and
Helen.
Don't ask a question about their age.
No, not at all.
They would if you asked for alcohol. And they would if you asked for fags. And, of course, the vapes have a very prominent position in the shop.
And Jamie has said, unlike World War I or World War II, where people were proud to be British and believed that the country was worth fighting for, we've now got a nation that does not have faith in their government. People don't want to fight for their country anymore, partially because of this.
Now, moving on, GB News understands that 350 people, that's illegal migrants, actually, crossed the Channel over the weekend. That takes the total number to over 1,000 so far this month.
That's right. This comes as the House of Lords will debate the government's Safety of Rwanda bill again this afternoon.
Now, yesterday on GB News, the Trade Secretary, Kemi Badenoch, was on GB News with Camilla Tominey, and she said she would not rule out leaving the European Court of Human Rights. Remember, she's a future potential Tory leader, so take a listen.
People are exploiting our country. They think that they can do what they like, and a lefty lawyer from somewhere is going to help them out and help them to stay here. And they usually use the Human Rights Act, which is based on the European Court of Human Rights. And what I say to people is that this is something that we have not ruled out. It's not the first thing that we want to do. We have other plans first, because there are many good things that are in the Human Rights Act. And there are many rights which we have, which we don't want to just make go away. We have to think about a plan to keep what's good and remove what's bad. So we have to think about it very carefully. But I wouldn't rule it out.
Joining us now is immigration lawyer Ivan Sampson. Ivan Sampson, she was quite clear there, the Trade Secretary. She was talking about lefty lawyers will step in. She means you.
It's sad that it's the same language. I was hoping that the potential leaders that will take over this poison chalice that we have, it would have a plan of some sort and not play the same old blame game. Blame me, blame other lawyers, blame the asylum seekers, blame the courts, blame the judges. But the only people that can take the blame is the government, because they've got their hand on the rudder. They decide policies, and the policies that they've put forward over the last, 2 or 3 years haven't worked. And not a single policy has brought one asylum seeker to remove. Look, in firm numbers, last year we had 29,000 small boat crossings. Out of that, only 1,200 people were actually removed. And that's irrespective of whether they were granted asylum or not. And the asylum grant rates are well over 50%. So of those 29,000, 50% of those people are still, most of them, almost entirely all of them, are still in the UK, not being removed, not being detained, and we're having to look after them. So there's a problem.
Yeah, there is a problem, Ivan. The problem for me is looking at the images, if you're listening on the radio, the images we were seeing to illustrate this story are hundreds of young men getting off the small boats. Hundreds of young men who, in my view, Ivan, many of them are economic refugees, economic migrants who are coming here because they think we're a soft touch and we're the land of milk and honey.
We are a soft touch. Look, 50% of them are not genuine. We know that. Now, are the government removing them? No. In fact, worse than that, most of them don't even have any identity documents. That means I could say I am Mr. Whatever from whatever country, and there's no way I can disprove that, because the government don't even have effective methods of screening people's identity. So the Home Office, I'm sorry to say this, is in a total, utter shambles. They don't have any policy to deal with this problem.
There must be a way, though, surely, Ivan, of getting round that. So, for instance, if you arrive with no papers at all, then, sorry, You cannot have leave to remain. You just can't. That is straight away. Now you could say, well, some of them have fled a war zone and, you know, they've come thousands of miles and maybe their passport fell out their back pocket. I don't know, as they were crossing Afghanistan, perhaps. But maybe in those situations, there must be ways of testing somebody's genuine knowledge of whether they are from the country that they say that they are from. It can't be that difficult, can it?
Well, it can if you live on the borders, and many of them do live on the borders. So they would have the knowledge they need about that part of the world, about the politics, the people, the language, the food. They ask. There's several questions. And also their accents are very similar. So I'm afraid there are people who do slip through the system. Look, the problem is that we need to have an effective policy. There is only one policy, and that is to do deals with other countries. And if we don't have those bilateral agreements, as we did with Albania, which has worked because the numbers have come down by 50%, and the reason being because most of them were Albanians. That's why the numbers have come down from 2022, from the 45, 50,000 down to the 25, 29,000 last year.
So what are the barriers to those deals, in your opinion?
Well, the biggest barrier is Syria. It's in war. So many people are coming from Syria, for example. We're not on good terms with Syria. So the other solution is that everyone takes their fair share. And I agree with you, Bev. If you don't have identity documents, you should not be allowed to step on our shores. It's as simple as that, because we don't know who you are. You could be a terrorist, you could belong to Hamas or another terrorist organization. So I agree with you on that point. You know, I'm a lawyer defending human rights. What I do also defend is our rights for our children and our people, not our people here who we don't know who they are.
On that point, and finally, what Kemi Badenoch said, you talk about our rights, our people. Why do we need European courts to tell us what to do? Why can't we rely on our own system? What's so special about them?
But it'll mirror the Human Rights Act, because if you look at the fundamental
why do we need them?
rights...
But why do we need them to police it for us? Why can't we do it ourselves? Why don't you trust British Parliament?
Well, this is the problem because of the new Iran Safe bill. They're effectively telling the courts the way to look at the evidence.
That's because the courts have got too much power.
It's a clear example of abuse of power when you give it in the wrong hands. And I'm afraid the current lot don't deserve to have that power.
Yeah, but Ivan, it's because the Human Rights Act gave too much power to the courts. The courts now decide laws in this country. Who gave them the power to decide the laws? They weren't elected. They're not accountable.
But look, Andrew, if we hadn't had that, the Rule 39 measures, we would be sending people to a country who is run by a dictatorial killer. He is a dictator, a well-recognised human rights abuser, and we're jumping into bed with him, please.
The United Nations sends people there. The United Nations sends people there, Ivan. 1,200, 1,400 this year.
Andrew, that old chestnut, read the Human Rights Watch
report,
true. Which is only out yesterday, OK? And I defy you, go into Kigali with a sign saying, pull Kagame out, and we'll see what happens to you. So please, let's be realistic.
If you did that in Britain with Rishi Sunak out, they'd all say yes.
But it's not a safe country, Andrew, I promise you, no matter what people say. It's not. Look at the evidence.
OK, all right, always good to see you. Ivan Sampson there, immigration lawyer. How did you think Kemi Badenoch did in that interview with Camilla, commenting on GBNews yesterday morning? Yes, she was.
It was a good interview. Camilla was very robust, and she is very robust. She speaks the language I think people understand.
She doesn't have a sense of humour, though, does she?
She doesn't. I've got to say that. And I've met her a few times. I met her last week. And she ain't great at small talk either. But
no. Maybe you don't need that.
No, exactly.
You're not meant to be a stand-up comedian. Didn't do Boris Johnson any harm, though, did it? That was one of the reasons why he won over the public, was his stint hosting that BBC Two show, Have I Got News for You, wasn't it? That was why he became popular. So whether Kemi... But maybe we're just sick of that now. We just want sensible, serious, and perhaps Kemi Badenoch is that person.
And if you want boring, you'll get Keir Starmer.
Let us know your thoughts. GBViews@gbnews.com. Now, a murder investigation has been launched after 2 teenage boys died following a stabbing in Bristol.
They were aged 15 and 16, that's all. They were attacked shortly before a group of people fled the scene in a car.
A 44-year-old man and a 15-year-old boy have been arrested and remain in custody.
Joining us with the latest from Bristol is our reporter on the ground, Jeff Moody. Jeff.
Well, a sense of disbelief here in Bristol this morning. People have been arriving throughout the morning to lay flowers at the scene where the attack happened on around 11:20 on Saturday evening. There was also a candlelit vigil here last night too. Well, the police have now released the names of the two teenagers who sadly lost their lives. Max Dixon, who was 16, and Mason Rist, who was 15. Now, they were attacked, as I say, at around 11:20 on Saturday evening by a group of people. They were taken to hospital but died shortly after arriving at the hospital. Avon and Somerset police say that the attackers fled the scene from a car. That car, we believe, has now been seized by the police. The police have arrested a 44-year-old man and a 15-year-old boy too. But they say they're looking for more people too. They say that there were more attackers and the search is now being spread far and wide to find those. Now, earlier on today, Commander Superintendent Mark Ronacres gave this statement. He said, "This is an incredibly shocking and tragic incident. Our collective thoughts are with their families at what is undoubtedly a very difficult time. Specialist family liaison officers will now be assigned to the families to provide them with support and keep them updated on the investigation." Well, the police have opened a special police unit just down the road from here, and they're appealing to anybody that has seen anything or knows anything about these attackers to come forward. They're especially looking for people that were on a bus that went along this road, Ilminster Avenue, at around the time of the attack on Saturday night. They're looking for anybody that might have been on that bus who can help them with their inquiries.
OK, thank you, Jeff. Really sad story. Awful, awful for the families. It just was every weekend. Teenage boys killing each other. You know, the thing that I find interesting about this knife debate, though, when I talk to my teenagers, my son particularly, about it, and his argument is that a lot of boys going out don't feel safe. They're not safe. So they take a knife because they don't think the police will ever come if anybody tries to attack them. They don't feel that the police have any presence in their community. They feel that all the kids are wearing masks. They've all got hats on, hoods on and masks. No idea who they are. They never get caught. They're just acting lawless.
And, of course, if these kids are in gangs, they have to have a knife. Part of being cool, being we've got to somehow get it into these kids. It isn't fashionable, it isn't cool to have a knife. It's lethal and it could cost you your liberty.
Absolutely.
And we only found out last week, didn't we? Sometimes if you're caught in possession of a knife, you can write a letter of apology. To who?
Yeah, well, exactly. Let's just have a look at a few more of your thoughts this morning. Talking of young people and vaping, Carol has said, why can't teachers also take charge of the vaping situation and try to talk kids in school out of vaping? Their influence might go a long way.
It's a good point, because we know there's a lot of vaping going on school playgrounds. Well, when we were kids, you weren't allowed to smoke at all, anywhere on the school even if you were 18.
But the thing is about vaping is you can't necessarily smell it. It's not like smoking. They're high on nicotine, and the teachers and the parents don't necessarily know. Katie said people who vape often have no thoughts for others. If you're unfortunate enough to be behind a vapor, you get this cloud of disgusting smoke. You do sometimes, you're right. It depends kind of what they're smoking, which has just come through their nostrils straight at you. Not at all pleasant if you've got your mouth open. It is antisocial. But it's been sold as being social.
It's also been sold as a healthy alternative to smoking. It isn't.
No.
Because there's 5%. The chemicals, we're still not sure on the damage the chemicals do.
Yeah.
And children have been admitted to hospital in the last year through vaping-related ailments.
Yeah, and a reminder, the Prime Minister will be talking about this very issue this morning between now and midday. Now, still to come. At school. We're on course for the driest ever January.
And we're not talking about the weather.
No.
We're talking about boozing.
Have you taken part this year? You won't believe how many millions of people have. We will be talking about those very boring souls in just a moment after the break. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Cheers.
Cheers.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
.26 with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Well, dry January is nearly over. You have my sympathies if you manage to stick with it.
She started it for about 2 days.
I had the best of intentions. January the 3rd, I fell off the wagon. I work with you every day, what do you expect? It's been a grim month, though, for pub owners, as more people are expected to have given up alcohol at the start of this year than ever before.
With rising numbers of people drinking low or no alcohol, the British Beer and Pub Association says that boozers have got to start stocking more booze-free alternatives. We're joining us now to discuss this. You know him so well, pub landlord Adam Brooks and the Director of Communications at the charity Alcohol Change UK, Joe Marley. Let's talk to the pub
Morning,
landlord.
Gentlemen.
Have you noticed it, Adam? Has it been a very dry January in your hostelry?
I've been pretty lucky this January. I've done okay, but I'm hearing horror stories from colleagues out there, you know, so let's just remember, it's not just dry January that's hurting the pubs this January. There's so many factors, the high bills, you know, people haven't got a lot of money left from Christmas. So, again, I haven't seen it, but I'm hearing horror stories out there.
Do you get frustrated, Adam, by this media obsession, all the Sunday supplements full of dry January advice, all the shows like ours? Actually, we're probably the only show that doesn't make a big thing of dry January.
Do not.
But all this sort of feeding into it, and you feel like you're the outcast if you're not doing it, and that's awful for pubs.
A little bit, yeah, but look, I'm very boring myself. I'm
You
teetotal
don't
for
drink,
the last
do you?
5 years. No, 5 years. So it's hard for me to speak on that. But look, I sell a lot of non-alcoholic beers, spirits. You know, I do cater for the customers.
So can I have an alcohol-free gin and tonic at your boozer? Can I have an alcohol-free gin and tonic?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do that. But like even yesterday, without sort of naming products too much, I ran out of non-alcoholic Guinness. There was a load of people on non-alcoholic, and that's a really good product. It's very popular as well. So look, people are dipping their toes into the non-alcoholic ranges, and you know, if your pub doesn't serve any of these products, then they are being left behind because they are they are wanted by the customer at the moment.
Interesting. Joe, let's bring you in from Alcohol Change UK. I imagine you are one of these people who has been encouraging people to do dry January, are you? And if so, why?
Yeah, definitely encouraging people to try dry January. Lots of different reasons that people take part. So it could be health benefits, there's well-being benefits too, different reasons that people want to just take a break from alcohol for 31 days. But we just heard, you know, lots of different reasons that you can still go to the pub. And something that we're really keen to do at Alcohol Change UK is actually continue doing the things that you enjoy doing. So if you are someone who enjoys going to the pub, we've definitely been encouraging people to continue going, continue seeing your friends and family, and enjoy the alcohol-free options that are available. So there are more than ever before. I've definitely enjoyed them this January. It's a good thing to go out and do.
There's some suggestion by some experts that actually dry January is not good for you, Joe. Actually, you're better to have a couple of days off the booze every week and just moderate your drinking steadily rather than taking 31 days. It's a bit of a shock to the system, particularly if you drink as much as Bev Turner.
Well, the science is quite clear that actually having a 31-day break does work for a lot of people. So having a complete reset can be really, really beneficial. And actually having that complete break, our research finds that people who take part in dry January are more likely to be drinking, have a healthier relationship with alcohol 6 months down the line. So if they take part with Alcohol Change UK, it can lead to long-term benefits. Obviously, if you're drinking at really, really heavy, high rates, it can be dangerous. So if you're at risk of alcohol withdrawal, don't go alcohol-free completely. It's really important to speak to a GP to get proper medical advice. So there is that caveat. But it's a good way to do it, and we encourage people to think about long-term changes as well.
I mean, I love your optimism that you think people should still go to the pub and not have a drink. But particularly, let's say, the younger generation who aren't necessarily paying their mortgage bills and stuff, but they might have a little bit of disposable income, the students and stuff. They want to go out to the pub. They want to have a few drinks, get some Dutch courage, and maybe find someone that might become their future wife or husband. And you, Joe, are in danger of spoiling that very important part of our British culture.
I think young people are probably more open to mixing and matching. I think that's what we see now. Moderation is actually what young people want to do. There's a cultural shift for young people generally to want to drink less but not miss out on those experiences. So young people, I think, are more likely to still want to go to the pub, still want to experience hospitality settings, but they might be more likely to say, yeah, I still want to drink a bit, but I also want to, in amongst it, have an alcohol-free drink in between. So I think it's great to hear about pubs that have the option. We just want to have the choice when we go out and about.
Adam, is there as much profit baked into an alcohol-free drink as an alcoholic drink for you as a landlord?
Yeah, I mean, now all sort of companies are doing these ranges. So as I said earlier, Guinness was a very popular one for me yesterday. You've got beers, you've got spirits, they're all doing it. I mean, this started a good few years ago and it's just getting bigger and bigger. So look, obviously, I would rather a group come in and, be on the beers all day. I'm going to take more money that way. But I can't take any sort of customers in January that want to be out, because you've got to remember they've got very little money from Christmas, a lot of people now. The weather's depressing, so to get these people out of their homes, I'm just pleased to see people coming through that door.
Yeah.
But one thing I do want to raise on here quickly is the government has got to cut the VAT for hospitality. We're not going to survive, and I've been saying it on here for 2.5 years. If they do not cut that for pubs, it's game over for so many this year, and I'm hearing horror stories.
OK.
All right.
Thank you, gentlemen. Joe Marley from Alcohol Change UK and Adam Brooks, pub landlord and of this parish.
And now I've broken January, I'm not going to bother with it the rest of the month. We've only 3 days to go. Well, no, what I mean is I think I could go back onto it because I didn't drink on Saturday because I went to the theatre. But
Joy.
Yeah,
A little bit of what you fancy.
Exactly.
Is good for you, in my opinion. Right.
Still to come. The not so beautiful game. Well, I can't stand it anyway, football. But the FA Cup clash between West Brom and Wolves was paused after violence broke out in the stands between supporters of both sides.
That's right. It raises a question. Is football safe for families anymore? Would you take your kids to these sorts of matches now if it's all going to start going back to a bit like it was in the 80s? Is that what we're looking at? All that and much more after your morning's news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Beth, thank you. Your top stories from the GB Newsroom. The Foreign Secretary has condemned an attack which killed 3 American troops in Jordan. A drone strike targeted a US base in the northeast of the country on the border with Syria yesterday. Blaming Iranian-backed militants, President Biden has vowed to hold those responsible to account. Tehran has denied any involvement. The attack has fuelled fears of a wider conflict in the region. A special review has been ordered into the NHS Trust, which treated the man who killed 3 people in Nottingham. Valdo Calicane was given a hospital order after a court heard he'd been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. The 32-year-old stabbed Barnaby Webber, Grace O'Malley Coomer and Ian Coates last June and tried to kill 3 other people with a van. The families of the victims are now questioning the care he received. Floral tributes have been laid for 2 teenage boys who were fatally stabbed in Bristol. They've been named locally as 15-year-old Mason Wrist and 16-year-old Max Dixon. They were attacked by a group of people on Saturday night. A 44-year-old man and a 15-year-old boy have been arrested as part of a murder investigation. They remain in custody. The Prime Minister has described a ban on disposable vapes as balanced. Rishi Sunak says the government's taking the right action following a rise in the number of children using the devices. It's understood the ban across Britain will come into force within the next year. The Rwanda bill returns to the House of Lords, with the country's safety again being questioned. The second reading follows a busy weekend for Border Force officials. GB News understands around 350 illegal migrants crossed the English Channel, taking the total to over 1,000 people so far this year. For more on all of those stories, you can visit our website, gbnews.com.
For stunning gold and silver coins you'll always value, Rosland Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2703 and €1.1738. The price of gold is £1,596.55 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 7,643 points.
Rosland Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Carson, this Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Very
Prime
good
Minister's
morning.
on a school visit and he's talking about why he wants to get rid of disposable vaping. Let's have a listen. Here he is.
The job as Prime Minister is to do what I believe is right for the long term of our country. And if you talk to any parent or teacher, as I've been doing here at this school in Darlington this morning, they'll talk to you about the worrying rise in vaping amongst children. Now, children shouldn't be vaping. We don't want them to get addicted. We still don't understand the full long-term health impacts of vaping. So it's right that we take strong action to stamp this out. That's what we're doing. Banning disposable vapes, taking powers to go after the flavours, the appearance, the packaging where vapes are displayed in stores, but also improving enforcement, making it easier to levy on-the-spot fines at retailers who shouldn't be selling to kids. Taken together, it's a strong set of measures so we can improve our children's health. It's the right long-term thing for the country.
There are people who want to stop smoking, though, who believe actually disposable vapes are the best way to stop people smoking, effectively, because it's easier, it's cheaper. Will it be backfiring if more people end up getting hooked on tobacco by banning disposable vapes?
Well, it's important that we maintain vapes for adult smokers who want to stop, because for those people, it's obviously preferable that they vape rather than smoke. That's why actually we're pioneering the Swap to Stop campaign. 1 million people are being provided with kits to help them through the NHS, and actually one of the first countries in the world to do a program like that. It's also why we have balanced these proposals, targeting the things that are particularly appealing to children. And that's what this is about, is protecting children's health. That's why the marketing, the flavours, the appearance, where they are displayed in stores. And what's clear is it's disposable vapes that are behind the very worrying rise in children's vaping. Children disproportionately and overwhelmingly use disposable vapes. So I think we've got the balance right. Supporting adult smokers to stop smoking with our vape kits and dedicated support for them, but targeting all the things that make sure that children shouldn't have access to vapes.
The other part of what you're doing, obviously, is this generational smoking ban, effectively. It's a gradual smoking ban. Your predecessor, Liz Truss, says this is part of the nanny state. It's a very unconservative thing to do. What would you say to that?
Well, I don't think there's anything unconservative about caring about.
So that was the Prime Minister. He's at a school somewhere in the
County Durham, in
County
Darlington.
Durham. Very good talking about smoking. But I wondered if you might have more to say about, are we on the verge of World War III?
He's also very hungry right there, of course, when you
he is.
see him, because he announced this weekend that he doesn't eat for 36 hours from Saturday night or something.
It's Sunday night at 5
Sunday
p.m.
night?
till dawn tomorrow. Extraordinary.
And we're hoping he's going to talk about
face.
the war. If we hear something about that as well, we will let you know what he said, because Joe Biden has blamed Iran for the deaths of 3 US troops in this drone attack on an American base near Jordan's border with Syria.
The US President says we will respond, while Donald Trump, he's reacted to the attack saying we're on the brink of World War III. Is he right? Let's talk to former head of counter-terrorism, Major General Chip Chapman. I hope he's wrong, Chip, Donald Trump.
I think he is wrong. He's wrong for a number of reasons. The first one is that the last attack, the Taji in March 20, Donald Trump was president at that time. There was a couple of retaliatory strikes then, which happened on the 11th and 13th of March 2020. That was it. This won't be World War III. There will be retaliatory strikes, but I think there'll be restrained retaliation. Now, the other part of that is there could be overwhelming retaliation. That notion that that is the sort of Lincoln AM type people, the notion of go big or go home. But we are in a retaliatory cycle. We're not anywhere near World War III. We're not going to be defined by scale, intensity, resource, commitment, and aims, which would be indicative of World War III.
Just explain to us, Chip, why these American soldiers, are in Jordan, why are they there, and why would they be the target via a drone? And Iran are now rowing back and saying, actually, they were nothing to do with it.
Well, I think Iran were something to do with it. You've got to understand the geography of the region. Tower 22 in Jordan, it's really at the intersection of 3 countries, that is Iraq, Syria and Jordan. And in that area, there's a big US base, Al-Tanf, which overall the American commitment in Syria is 900. In Iraq, it's 2,500. They really have 3 aims. The first one is why they're in Iraq and Syria is to defeat ISIS. That is the same thing as the UK commitment under Operation Shader. The second thing is to train, advise and assist the Iraqi and Jordanian forces in that first mission. And the third one is to counter Iranian influence in Syria. And the Tanf base, the area around Tower 22 where this occurred, is on a significant border crossing, the Al-Walid crossing, which is the route from Baghdad to Damascus, where, for example, the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, supply Hezbollah and therefore threaten Israel. It is true that the attacks have gone up since the 17th of October. There have been 160 against American forces, but I see this as part of this sort of persistent twilight war, which has been exacerbated by the Israeli-Gaza conflict.
We know, don't we, though, Chip, there's an American election this year, so Biden has said he will respond, and he will respond, not least because he'll be worried what his Republican opponent will say. How proportionate should the response be, and what form should it take?
Yeah, I think the political space does diminish for Joe Biden. What I think they will do is go for either a high-value target, as in a number of individuals from the IRGC, or high-value facilities. Now, where might that be? I don't think it will be in Iran. It will be in Syria or Iraq. We saw the Israelis take out 5 IRGC in an airstrike in Damascus on the 20th of January. They'll be looking for those sort of people. So if you go back to that 2020 example that I gave, they did an airstrike on a place called Bukamal in eastern Syria. That has already been ordered to temporarily evacuate because of the fear of US retaliation. I think you need a target which is better than that for this to be credible from a US side.
All right, thank you, Chip. Major General Chip Chapman there, being, I think, a little calm and reassuring that we're not necessarily heading. Emma Wolf and Matthew Laza are with us here in the studio. And you know what? When I think about Joe Biden being at the helm of America, I do feel slightly concerned, particularly this new footage emerged this weekend. Ask yourself, does this look like a man who is in control of his faculties, never mind red buttons?
The beer brewed here, it is used to make the brew beer in this refinery. Oh, Earth Rider, thanks for the great lake.
And it's not even satire. It's not satire. That is the President of the United States, the world's most powerful figure. Matthew Lazo, you must be horrified. You want him to win the next presidential election.
I certainly do, because I think the person who would start World War III would be Donald Trump. But it clearly is worrying. I mean, it would be, you know, if there was a way of letting Biden go into a well-deserved retirement and a new candidate emerging, then that would obviously make me happy, because I think that would increase the chances of beating Trump.
Look, somebody just has to get a grip of this.
Yeah.
And say, Mr. President, you're not up to it. You've got to have a cognitive test. And if you fail it...
Well, do you remember that during the Trump presidency there was talk that the Supreme Court could move in, because there is actually a test within the American Constitution of being in a fit state to be president. You do think that maybe that moment is coming? I have a secret hunch that Biden is going to pull out.
He is, and Michelle Obama's waiting in the wings, isn't she? But Emma, I slightly bristle when I hear Matthew say that Donald Trump would trigger World War III, because his presidency demonstrated the polar opposite.
Exactly, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Wars.
I would have thought he doesn't want to waste money and resources abroad, and actually there were fewer interventions. To paraphrase, I think that this is a serious time for serious politicians, and we have a half-senile US president in charge at a time when, as Chip says, it's a sort of retaliatory cycle. It's not, we're maybe not on the brink of World War III, but tensions are rising, and this is, not, for me, one doesn't feel much confidence from Biden, as you say, in charge of...
But do you feel any more with Trump? A serious person for serious times? Trump strikes me as the least serious person to have been American president.
There would be less
I don't think there's anybody talking about whether... Look, you may think he's mad in the sense of his opinions, but nobody's suggesting his cognitive powers are wrong.
Well, there was a bit of a suggestion, because he couldn't remember Nikki Haley's name the other day, but maybe just having a minor senior moment.
Up with that ghastly woman who used to be the Speaker, who you like, of course, Nancy Pelosi.
Nancy Pelosi.
They're quite opposites. That does show some lack of cognitive ability.
Both ghastly.
Yeah, absolutely. But you see, what was I just going to say then? It's just, I'm watching this footage of Trump here. He quite clearly, when we think about what Biden did, pulling out of Afghanistan, Biden literally just picked up the troops.
But Trump had already run it down in Afghanistan.
But he may have already run it down, but it wasn't. No, it was chaotic the way they just left. And I think for the Middle East, they looked at Biden and they just thought, well, you are weak. Whoever's making you make these decisions.
The Taliban were in control within 3 days.
Yeah, look, I think that putting out of Afghanistan was shameful, and I don't agree with either the American actions there or our actions there, because we also pulled out as well on the Americans' coattails. But look, I'm really worried about the Republicans cutting off funding for Ukraine, which is what they're trying to do in Congress at the moment. I'm worried that he will give in to Vladimir Putin, who, we never know what intel Putin's got on him. We won't take you back to the incidents that were meant to have happened in that Moscow hotel room, etc. So I think we do need a serious person for serious times, and let's hope that a serious Democrat can take over from Biden.
Let's move on from the war now. Should we have a general election now, Emma? Is dragging this out going to be worse for everybody involved?
Yeah, I think so. I think that, it's now inevitable that we are facing Rishi Sunak's facing Conservative defeat probably this autumn. And meanwhile, the country is just, descending. I mean, worse and worse, whether it's football violence or problems abroad. I think that we are just dragging this out. The anti-Conservative vote is strong. The pro-Labour vote is not very strong. Lots of people just cannot bring themselves. So it's very, very hard to see how this comes out with a sort of positive, outcome. But what are we dragging this out for? Shouldn't there be a moment when we can say, look, enough is enough?
Absolutely.
You're excited because you've got a defector.
Yes, we have this morning. So never mind mum going to Iceland, as the advertising slogan used to have it. Today, Keir's gone to Iceland, as Keir Starmer is touring an Iceland store in the northwest this morning, because Richard Walker, who is the Iceland boss, who was a Tory supporter, a Tory donor, and indeed he wanted at one stage to be a Tory MP, has come out backing... He left the Tories a few months ago, and he's come out this morning backing Starmer because he thinks that he's changed the Labour Party and he understands the cost of living crisis.
Just 3 months ago, Richard Walker, this new campaigning, who's got all his zeal and enthusiasm for Keir Starmer, said, as you'll be aware, it is my most fervent wish I should succeed in becoming an approved Conservative Party candidate. I've over the last years given my all to earning that privilege. I've striven to ensure everything I say in the public arena supports the government and the Conservative Party. 3 months ago, he wrote this to Rishi Sunak. And why has he defected in a huff to Labour? Because he didn't get a seat.
Cynicism, Andrew.
He is the most spectacularly insincere turncoat.
He can see which side his bread is buttered. He sees the way the country is going. He's the chairman of one of the biggest...
Chameleon.
Supermarket chains in the country. He's not saying he adores Starmer. He says, I'm not joining the Labour Party, but he sees that actually he's backing a losing horse at the moment.
He says he's got compassion and concern for the less fortunate.
Matthew, if he got a seat 3 months ago,
he gets a lot of money from
he
the
would
less
be
fortunate.
campaigning for the Tories.
And he says that Keir Starmer's demonstrated in the way he's transformed his own party that he can transform the country.
He is a man of straw.
But it's not just Richard Walker. So there's a new poll also out this morning showing that 70% of the nation's house builders are backing Labour because they know that we need to get rid of the regulations that are stopping us building the houses.
Remind me, what is the target now, Labour, for building houses? What is the target? Just remind me what you've changed it to, Matthew.
That escapes me as I'm not the Labour House inspector.
To be honest, in terms of what
I'd love to be. I'd go in the Lords.
But in terms of what Matthew's saying, I think there is.
I'll tell you 11 o'clock.
With big business and with the house builders and all of that, maybe the ground is shifting now. Maybe everybody has accepted that the Conservatives are on the.
There's a bit of 1997, isn't there, when everybody
quite fast over the next few months, and I think.
Also, remember Rachel Reeves was there in Davos. She was pressing the flesh with all the business people in Davos.
Yeah, and it's important that Labour talks to business people, as it is. We talk to workers' representatives to the trade unions all the time.
He'd rather be in Davos than Parliament.
That's because he doesn't like Parliament. He doesn't say he'd rather be in Davos than be in Britain. Obviously, he's very patriotic and loves his country. That's why he's put the Union Jack on the Labour membership card. But I think it's really important that Labour talks to business. Yes, of course, some people. I remember, I'm old enough. I know you couldn't think it, but I'm old enough to remember 1997 when it was like moths to a flame. When it looks like there's going to be a change of government. Yes, of course, there's a bit of people going to the winning side.
There was a lot of passion and excitement in the air about Blair, though, because I do remember it and I was covering it, and there isn't that passion or enthusiasm.
No, but I think it's because we want a calmer style of leadership after we've had a lot of we've had a bit of a celebrity over the last few years with Mr. Johnson.
Spinning?
No, that's why you have me on.
Calmer Starmer.
Matthew, they would die. They would kill for a leader as exciting as Tony Blair. They would kill.
Matthew, thank you so much. We'll be back in just a little while. Still to come, the Mona Lisa was pelted with soup over the weekend by climate activists. We'll tell you what kind of soup it was after this break. This is Britain's Newsroom.
I might have done the same.
On GB News.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning. We've got a three-way split across the UK today. Frosty start in the north, wet across Wales, northern England, cloudy in the south. And we can see that nicely on the chart for the rest of the day. The rain really set in across parts of Wales, northern parts of the Midlands into northern England right through the day, turning increasingly heavy as we move into the afternoon. Sunny skies for Northern Ireland, much of Scotland. It will be hazy sunshine here. A chilly day to come here. Across the south, mild but rather cloudy, some brighter breaks allowing temperatures to lift to around 14 Celsius. In the north, around 7 to 8 Celsius generally. Into the evening time, the rain continues across parts of Wales, northern England, but it just slowly starts to push its way into the North Sea. Clear skies across Northern Ireland and Scotland will allow temperatures to fall below freezing here and a patchy frost to form. Met Office warnings for rain last right through the night, so there could be some tricky driving conditions if you are travelling through into Tuesday morning. Temperatures under the cloud and the rain generally holding up well above freezing. So a great start for England and Wales. Outbreaks of rain and drizzle continuing to slowly push away eastwards. Frosty, sunny start for Northern Ireland and Scotland. Here it will stay dry for much of the day. Elsewhere it slowly starts to brighten up from the west, but generally staying cloudy and temperatures a little lower than they have been, 9, 11, 10, 11 Celsius. In the sunshine, 7 or 8 further north.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Up next, the plight of people parking on the pavement is being tackled in Liverpool and Edinburgh. Would you tell on a repeat offender if they parked on your curb? Honestly, it's snooping Britain, isn't it? You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News, the People's Channel.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Carson, this Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show, every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
– 11 a.m. on Monday, the 29th of January. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Very good morning to you. Are we on the brink of World War III? Well, that's the warning from Donald Trump as the US President Joe Biden vows to retaliate after 3 US service personnel were killed in a drone attack that Iran are taking no responsibility for.
Another small boat search. GB News has discovered 388 people crossed the Channel. They're illegal migrants, of course, in small boats over the weekend. That's now over 1,000 so far this month. Our political editor, Chris Hope, has more.
The Rwanda plan is back in the House of Lords today. How many bishops might oppose it? And will it be a problem for Rishi Sunak?
And the not-so-beautiful game. The FA Cup derby clash between West Brom and Wolves was paused after violence broke out in the stands between supporters on both sides this weekend. Is football safe for families anymore?
And those idiots, this time the Mona Lisa they vandalised. Environmental activists threw pumpkin soup on the world's most famous painting on Sunday. They did so calling for the right to healthy and sustainable food. Both of them are in their 60s. Holding up to it better.
And pavement parking crackdown. Is it a bugbear of yours or is it just simply a necessity? Edinburgh Council and Liverpool Council are coming down hard on those who park on the curb. And we've got someone from Just Stop Oil coming in to have a chat to us.
To defend that idiocy.
They are brave, aren't they?
To defend that idiocy.
On this occasion, this wasn't Just Stop Oil. Apparently, if you've got any point to make these days, you just go and throw stuff at paintings. It's absolutely ridiculous. gbviews@gbnews.com is the email address to get in touch with us this morning. Let us know your thoughts first, though. With the very latest headlines, here's Tatiana Sanchez.
Bev, thank you. 2 minutes past 11. Your top stories from the GB Newsroom. The Prime Minister's urging Iran to de-escalate tensions in the Middle East after an attack killed 3 American troops in Jordan. A drone strike targeted a US base in the northeast of the country on the border with Syria yesterday. Blaming Iranian-backed militants, President Biden has vowed to hold those responsible to account. Tehran responded, saying it wasn't behind the attack, and it accused America of trying to incite and expand the crisis. It's fuelled fears of a wider conflict in the region. Rishi Sunak says the UK is working towards stability.
We absolutely condemn what has happened over the past couple of days. My thoughts are with all of those impacted, those who've lost their lives, their families, and those that are injured. We stand resolutely with our allies to bring stability and peace to the region, and that's what we'll continue to work towards.
A special review has been ordered into the NHS Trust, which treated the man who killed 3 people in Nottingham. Valdo Calicane was given a hospital order after a court heard he'd been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. The 32-year-old stabbed Barnaby Webber, Grace O'Malley Coomer and Ian Coates last June and tried to kill 3 other people with a van. The families of the victims are now questioning the care he received. 2 teenage boys fatally stabbed in Bristol have been named locally. Floral tributes have been laid at the scene where 15-year-old Mason Wrist and 16-year-old Max Dixon died after being attacked by a group of people on Saturday night. A 44-year-old man and a 15-year-old boy have been arrested as part of a murder investigation. They remain in custody. Police are trying to trace a mother after a newborn baby was found dead in Leeds. The child was discovered in the toilets of the 3 Horseshoes in Alton yesterday. West Yorkshire Police is concerned for the mother's welfare. It's urgently appealing for help in trying to find her. The Prime Minister has described a ban on disposable vapes as balanced. Rishi Sunak says the government's taking the right action following a rise in the number of children using the devices. It's understood the ban across Britain will come into force within the next year. Health Secretary Victoria Atkins says the government wants to create the first smoke-free generation.
None of us think that children should be vaping, and yet the evidence is emerging very quickly that over the last 3 years, for example, the number of children that have taken up vaping has trebled. Some 69% of children use disposable vapes. And not only are they a gateway to nicotine addiction, of course, we know also they litter our streets.
Director General of the UK Vaping Association, John Dunn, criticised the government's move as a stunt.
I really think they're throwing the 4.6 million vapers under the bus as a cheap publicity stunt to get votes. Now, vaping is the most successful way that people quit smoking in the UK. It's twice as effective as all others. And really, the people that they're throwing under the bus here are those people who have the least amount of income in the highest smoking areas during a cost of living crisis.
The Rwanda bill returns to the House of Lords, with the country's safety again being questioned. The second reading follows a busy weekend for Border Force officials. Home Office figures show 388 illegal migrants crossed the English Channel over the weekend, taking the total to over 1,000 people so far this year. The Archbishop of Canterbury, who's raised concerns about asylum seekers on small boats being sent to Kigali, will be among those expected to address peers later today. West Bromwich Albion could be sanctioned after violent scenes in the FA Cup last night. Fights erupted in the stands and fans spilled onto the pitch during the Black Country derby, halting play for more than half an hour. There were reports of fans clashing with police, and one person was taken to hospital with head injuries. 4 West Brom supporters and 2 Wolves fans were arrested and have been bailed pending further inquiries. And forecasters are warning large parts of the UK will see what's being called a 3-way split in the weather. The Met Office has issued a yellow rain alert for large areas of northern England from midday until tomorrow morning. It's also said a band of rain stretching from Scotland to southwest England will keep temperatures mild. It's after much of the country experienced its warmest January, with temperatures reaching 19 degrees in Scotland. Those are your top stories on GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying Play GB News. Now back to Andrew and Bev.
Very good morning. It is 11:07 Monday morning. Let's have a quick look at what you've been saying at home. You've been getting in touch with us. I got myself a fresh cup of tea. I hope you have at home as well. I think you've got the latest ones there. There you go.
We were talking about conscription, of course. What's the point? Chrissy says, what's the point of fighting a war that no one will win, will only cause world destruction and chaos? We need to find peaceful solutions as soon as possible. And we tell that to people in Ukraine.
Yvonne says, why would we fight for a country whose government has gone all against its values, is not even politically stable?
But aren't we fighting for the country rather than the government? Would that be what
Yeah,
we do?
that's the thing, but you know, the word freedom, let's face it, has come under a little bit of criticism in the last 3 years, and so the idea that we're fighting for our freedom, I think, is a little confusing for people like me. Bernard said, perhaps a good idea for young offenders would be to give them a choice when sentencing. They either get 5 years in prison or 2 years in the army. If they defy the discipline in the army, then they go straight to prison for the next 5 years.
Good idea.
I think
What's
so.
wrong with that?
Honestly, I just think, I'm old-fashioned, but discipline, exercise, rules, regulations, for some of these kids, particularly the young boys who are committing knife crime, the army would be fantastic diversion from the path that they're on in life.
I agree. Now, we've been reporting on GB News that 388 people, illegal migrants to you and I, crossed the Channel over the weekend. That's now over 1,000 already in January.
That's right. This comes as the House of Lords will debate the government's Safety of Rwanda bill again this afternoon.
And yesterday on GB News, Secretary of State for Business and Trade Kemi Badenoch told our own Camilla Tominey that she would not rule out leaving the European Court of Human Rights. This is what she said.
People are exploiting our country. They think that they can do what they like and a lefty lawyer from somewhere is going to help them out and help them to stay here. And they usually use the Human Rights Act, which is based on the European Court of Human Rights. And what I say to people is that this is something that we have not ruled out. It's not the first thing that we want to do. We have other plans first, because there are many good things that are in the Human Rights Act. And there are many rights which we have which we don't want to just make go away. We have to think about a plan to keep what's good and remove what's bad. So we have to think about it very carefully. But I wouldn't rule it out.
Well, joining us now is our political to Christopher Hope. Good morning, Christopher. Good to see you. Now, Kemi Badenoch does not do many sit-down media interviews. She's rather famously not terribly keen, it seems, on the media. I thought she came across very, very well. She was very loyal, wasn't she? Very loyal to the Prime Minister.
That's right. She disowned so-called friends of hers in the media who are undermining Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister. I thought she set up the interview well. I mean, she has some big news on Saturday. She persuaded, or maybe forced, or pushed out, or he resigned the head of the post office. That gave her a big positive thing to talk about. And I think it's a very confident media round. And for her and her supporters, that's important, because she's seen as the future of the Tory party. When Mrs Sunak leaves, someone like her will be a definite one to watch. Yeah, I thought she made good points there about the ECHR from the Tory right. They would be quite pleased by hearing that. Sarah Dines, a former Home Office Minister, says today's Telegraph, we need to stop taking the knee in front of the ECHR. The PM, Rishi Sunak, says he's going to stop listening to foreign courts. You won't be pushed around by foreign courts. Critics will say that the ECHR isn't foreign because we have a stake in it, but it is based in Strasbourg. But the point is that I think ECHR withdrawal is going to be an active issue for the next manifesto when the election happens, probably in November.
All right, that's political. Our political editor, Christopher Hope. In the studio with us is Tory peer Lord Bailey, Sean Bailey. Sean, it is going to be a big issue now, this European courts, because who governs Britain? Is it us and our own judiciary rather than... I mean, we do have a stake in the court, but we're one of 46 countries in that European court. We don't even know the nationality of the judge who blocked that Rwanda flight.
I actually think it's been a big issue since we had the whole Brexit debate, and many people voted to leave because of the lack of political control, legal control we have over our own goings on. I certainly was a leaver, and I actually was more concerned about the court than the financial thing, because I think certain things are worth paying for, and your freedom, your ability to govern yourself is very important. But the most important thing about this, I think other European nations are going to look at what happens to Britain and how we navigate this. France, Germany, Germany, parts of Eastern Europe are having huge problems with immigration as well. And if the court is seen as the gateway to letting people in and you not being able to deal with that situation, people could follow us out. Italy are having the same issue as well. So I actually think it's on the European courts to come in the direction of politics, not politics to placate them.
I don't know why we need a European court to tell us what to do. We've got one of the finest judiciaries in the world. Why can't they be trusted?
Our judiciary so fine rewrote the lion's share of the rules that the ECHR operates under. And I do think it does trouble your political legitimacy. If you cannot change something in Parliament and it become law without someone outside of the country accepting that, I think we need to have a look at that. And that transfer of power to Europe was one of the reasons many people voted to leave in Brexit. And if you speak to Italians, they feel the same about it. So do the Germans. The issue is when your country's facing something and the court makes it difficult, that's when it becomes a political issue. For us here right now, it's very political.
This bill has got the second reading, of course, in the House of Lords later today, Sean. What are going to be the sticking points with this?
Well, the first sticking point is that there's 71 speakers, so it's going to be an awful long debate. Look, some people are against this because they think legally it's going to be tricky. Other people are against this because it's purely political. You've got some in the middle who are a little bit worried about how we treat people and how we look internationally. And my response to the centre group would be, well, everybody else internationally does a very similar thing. The Dutch looked at this, the Swedish looked at this, the Australians do this. The UN send people to Rwanda. So the question is, why can't we? But I think the real issue here, people mightn't like it, but the Lords is doing its job properly because it is to scrutinise. Imagine you're in favour of this. The Lords needs to work out how it could be the strongest bill it can be to make sure it isn't just torn apart in court and we end up with no planes taken off.
And they're talking about delaying it for months. I saw Lord, he's a Lib Dem peer, former chief executive of the Lib Dems, writing in the FT last week saying under parliamentary law we can delay this for 12 months. There would be outrage.
Technically that's correct, but I think you're right, there would be outrage. But the real reason...
Lord Reynard.
Yeah.
So it was Lord Reynard.
But what Lord Reynard and everybody else should accept, the Lord's job is not to frustrate. The Lord's job is to mediate, is to look at, is to scrutinise.
And to improve.
And he has to admit, people on the Labour benches as well have to admit this is pure politics. The reason they're not talking about stopping is because they know in order to wreck this, they just need to delay. And if they want to play that game, they then risk at some point this being played against their side of the political violence.
Well, of course, they also then allow Rishi Sunak off the hook because he can say, well, I was going to stop the boats as per my 5 pledges, but I was thwarted by the Lib Dem Lords and by the Labour Lords.
And he would be correct. And let's be clear, he could already say that because every time the government has made some attempt to deal with this, either the legal system or the Labour Party has gotten in the way. The most interesting question for me, what else then? What would Keir Starmer do? Everybody keeps talking about sinking Rishi's plan. Fine. What would you do in response? And British people want that question answered. So currently, Rishi's deal is the only deal on the table. Labour do not have a viable, workable, changeable solution.
Well, they waffle on about cracking down on the gangs. Well, the government have been doing that for a very long time, and it's not working.
Yeah, and let's be clear, these are gangs that are internationally based, that are very sophisticated, that are full of money and have a huge customer base. Cracking down on the gangs sounds great, but what exactly would they do? My challenge to Keir Starmer and the entire Labour Party, every time you come up with an idea, please give us the detail. Rhetoric is not good enough now. We have people who are losing homes, we have people who are losing jobs over this kind of stuff. Give us detail or don't give us anything at all.
Sean, what do you make of this news this morning about these American troops being in, well, 3 killed and I think 35 of them sustained brain injuries at this base, this Tower 22 as it's called in Jordan? How should America respond to this now? Because it is a direct hit on American troops.
I think we are entering a new world order. When you talk to Liberals, they believe that the world is full of nice people and will stay the same. I think what's happening now, anywhere between Russia and Iran and China, they're showing you actually we don't like the world order, we're going to change it. And the fact that the Iran-backed rebels are this bold means that America will have to respond. In the past, rebels have been able to rely on Western restraint And if you look at Trump's recent comments, I think he's sending a signal to two sets of people, one, them and the Americans. He's saying to American people, actually, we're going to make sure we get value for money. We pay a lot of money into European defence. What are we getting for that? We don't want to hear that over here, but there is some truth in that. We had a long time where nations weren't paying their dues into NATO, as it were. He's also saying to the Houthis and Iran, whatever, don't rely on us to be restrained. You have behaved in a particular way, and we will, if I was president, we'd respond in kind. Now, some people don't like that. I don't think we're anywhere near World War III, but I do sometimes think a more robust response is what the American people want to hear, and many other people around the world.
So would you feel safer if Trump was in the White House than Biden?
I don't know if you can answer that question, but I would say this. Biden needs to not look weak, because we did air attacks, we did airstrikes, and they just came back harder. And if he knew anything about the Houthis, he would understand that they have been at war in their minds for the last 10 or 12 years. They have a great capacity to accept loss in a way a Western country wouldn't. So attacking them lightly means nothing. You have to do something very, very decisive, I would imagine, to change their behaviour. Donald Trump talks in a way as if he's more prepared to do that. The one thing I will say, when he was president, his rhetoric was stronger than his reaction. His reactions were very, very restrained, but his rhetoric suggested that he could do more. And I think in some instances that made Iran and everybody think twice before they attacked America.
Sure. Well, of course, he maintains if he'd been president, Putin wouldn't have gone on with the Ukraine conflict.
The one thing I say about Trump, he looks more capable of negotiating with Putin. Maybe they're like-minded, I don't know. But you think if Trump turns up, that's like, he's unpredictable.
That's right.
I think that gives him a better negotiating position rather than they look at Biden and think, well, he's weak, we're going to do what we want to do anyway. If Trump says he will attack, you probably have to believe him.
Would you make of this rumour that Michelle Obama's in the background waiting to step into Biden's shoes come spring, summer and take the Democratic nomination?
Because they can't carry on.
I've got this. I look at Biden and I'm not sure he has another 4 years in him.
He doesn't.
Sometimes he looks like he hasn't got another 4
They will
weeks.
replace him, I'm convinced.
I didn't want to be
unkind. Well, I'll be unkind for you. 4 weeks is enough for me.
Michelle Obama would take some beating.
Yes, she would.
She would take some beating.
First black president of the United States. Wasn't an extraordinary story.
Yeah, and I'd argue...
Well, second black president of the United States.
No, he was
First female black,
But she'd be 2 wins in one. But she's charismatic. She's entertaining. Now, could she deal with Trump and the whole circus? I don't know. But she'd start from a very high point.
Wouldn't she? And she says she lies awake at night worrying about Donald Trump becoming president again, and therefore that would be her motivation.
Would be a bit of dynastic politics again, wouldn't it? Because we had George W. Bush, we had...
Clintons.
The 2 Clintons, 2 Bushes, and then 2 Obamas. Can America not widen the gene pool a little larger than that?
One extraordinary difference between British politics and American politics, we do not do dynasty here. They absolutely
Just in the
love
monarchy.
it. Yeah.
But we don't mind that.
Maybe that's why we don't do it. We have our dynasty sorted.
Exactly.
But they really love it.
God save the king, and may he get better soon too.
Right, Sean, great to see you. We could have gone on all day. Now, still to come, the plight of people parking on the pavement. There's a lot of P's in that sentence, very satisfying. It's been tackled in Liverpool and Edinburgh. Would you tell on your neighbour if they parked on your curb repeatedly? I wouldn't. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GBNews. I bet you would.
I don't have a car, so I don't care.
Cute.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK. We're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 11:24 with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Pip Turner.
So disposable vapes are set to be banned in Britain as part of plans to tackle the rise in young people vaping and to protect children's health.
So it's part of the Prime Minister's much vaunted plans to phase out smoking, plans that have been denounced by his predecessor, Liz Truss, who says it's just an extension of the nanny state.
So let's speak to our political correspondent, Olivia Utley, for the latest. Good morning, Olivia. She's checking the latest headlines for us. Never not working, Olivia Utley. So this news actually broke about this policy was announced a little while ago, but actually Rishi Sunak is making quite a bit of statement about it today. This is real kind of an issue for him, isn't it? Kids and health, it seems.
Yeah, kids and health has become a huge issue for him. And after last week, when we saw that mini rebellion, Simon Clarke saying that the Prime Minister should resign, it seems as though the government has decided that what it needs to do is look very busy. So basically what the Prime Minister is doing at the moment is coming out with, maybe it's harsh to say, rehashed policy ideas, one of which is this ban on disposable vapes. Now, this has become a real bugbear for Rishi Sunak, children vaping, and you can see why. 20% of 11 to 18-year-olds said that they tried a vape in 2023. He's also extending it a bit to include a crackdown on non-disposable vapes as well. So vapes in flavours which are said to be aimed at children, like cherry cola and pink lemonade, are to be banned. And non-disposable vapes will have to be hidden away behind the counter rather than displayed on those colourful displays that we see in shop windows all so often. He's also talking again about his smoking ban, which is really interesting because this is set to cause him a bit of a headache in the House of Commons. There are about 70 MPs, including Liz Truss, Truss, who are going to vote to amend the legislation that Rishi Sunak is putting forwards, which would see smoking gradually phased out. So the ban would start at anyone who is 15 now. So anyone who is 15 now would never be able to buy cigarettes for the rest of their lives. Now, Liz Truss and her allies have said that that would be a ridiculous policy because in a few years it would result in a situation where adults would have different rights based on their birth dates. And what they would like to see instead is just the smoking age raised to 21. Now, Rishi Sunak will probably get his way on this because the Labour Party have said that they will back him. But a Prime Minister does not want to be in a situation where he is reliant on opposition votes to get flagship policy through. And if this rebellion does come to pass in the Commons, with Liz Truss and a group of right-wing, perhaps libertarian MPs voting against Rishi Sunak, that could cause the Prime Minister some real trouble with his authority in Parliament, which, as we know, is already pretty damaged.
I'm fascinated by the revelation at the weekend that the Prime Minister each week goes on a 36-hour fast, which begins, I think, at 5 p.m. on Sunday evening, goes all through today. So we've seen him speaking at a school today, looked pretty good to me, and that will carry on until 5 a.m. in the morning. I think it's linked to his Hindu faith. Who would have known it?
Well, he's very thin, and perhaps this is why. I mean, personally, I can't get my head around it at all. I've already had breakfast and a mid-morning snack, so I can't imagine a whole Monday without eating. His friends say that this shows an extreme discipline to Rishi Sunak, and I think discipline is something which we can all agree, like him or loathe him, that the Prime Minister has.
I think he just has water and tea.
If that, and was it commonly known, Olivia, amongst Westminster that he fasts for 36 hours?
No.
Well, most of Westminster knew that he did fast, that he has spoken before about fasting, but I don't think anyone realised quite the extent of it. I mean, a 36-hour fast every week is a pretty phenomenal feat of will. There are other, prime ministers and senior politicians who've talked about fasting in the past. I remember George Osborne followed the 5-2 diet. But as you say, Bev, that was talked about a lot more in Westminster. I mean, I still remember that, what must be 10 years on. Whereas Rishi Sunak has kept pretty quiet about this.
Yeah, OK.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Olivia. I was just reading a little bit about Hinduism, which is partly his motivation.
He's a
and it's an important part of Hindu faith.
But does it require them to do 36 hours?
I've not quite got that far yet. I'm increasing my knowledge of Hinduism as we talk. I'm reading the government guidelines on what to do if you've got a Hindu that works in your business.
And
he probably wrote them. If
you are Hindu or know about this, let us know. Do you fast too? Do you admire the Prime Minister doing that? I mean, good luck to him. It does show iron discipline.
It does.
I wonder what he then eats when the fast breaks.
Don't know. Who knew we'd be so interested in what the Prime Minister eats? But still to come, he's also vegetarian. Hindu's vegetarian.
Absolutely.
So he's vegetarian, he doesn't drink.
Has never smoked, and we've seen that today about his passion to stop smoking on every level.
Yeah.
And he is, I mean, when you see him, he is tiny and very wiry.
He is that. Right. Still to come. Rail chiefs are failing to uphold minimum service laws as Britain faces 9 days of rail strikes.
It drives you nuts, doesn't it? More strikes this week, and they could bring in this law which says you've got to provide 40% minimum cover. Not one of the rail companies have done it. Not one.
No.
You just give up.
More of our exasperation like that after your latest news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Bev, thank you. 11:30, your top stories from the GB Newsroom. The Prime Minister's urging Iran to de-escalate tensions in the Middle East after an attack killed 3 American troops in Jordan. A drone strike targeted a US base in the northeast of the country on the border with Syria yesterday. Blaming Iranian-backed militants, President Biden has vowed to hold those responsible to account. Tehran responded, saying it wasn't behind the attack, and it accused America of trying to incite and expand the crisis. It's fuelled fears of a wider conflict in the region. Rishi Sunak says the UK is working towards stability. A special review has been ordered into the NHS Trust, which treated Valdo Calicane, who killed 3 people in Nottingham. The 32-year-old was given a hospital order after a court heard he'd been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. He stabbed Barnaby Webber, Grace O'Malley Coomer and Ian Coates last June. The families of the victims are now questioning the care he received. 2 teenage boys fatally stabbed in Bristol have been named locally as 15-year-old Mason Rist and 16-year-old Max Dixon. Floral tributes have been laid at the scene where they died after being attacked by a group of people on Saturday night. A 44-year-old man and a 15-year-old boy have been arrested as part of a murder investigation. They remain in custody. The Prime Minister has described a ban on disposable vapes as balanced. During a school visit in County Durham, Rishi Sunak said he's taking strong action to stamp out the habit among young children, which has seen a rise. It's understood the ban will come into force within the next year. The Rwanda bill returns to the House of Lords, with the country's safety again being questioned. The second reading follows a busy weekend for Border Force officials. Home Office figures show 388 illegal migrants crossed the Channel over the weekend, taking the total to over 1,000 people so far this year. You can get more on all of those stories by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
For exclusive, limited edition and rare gold coins that are always newsworthy, Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2705 and 1.1744 euros. The price of gold is £1,595 and 10 pence per ounce, and the FTSE 100 at 7,651 points.
Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Now, up at noon, good afternoon, Britain, with Tom and Emily. What have you got coming up on the show today, guys?
So much. The week is kicking off with a very big set of stories. Not only is Rwanda being debated in the Lords, that crucial test of the government's policy, but also, of course, what's happening further afield around the world. Are we being dragged slowly towards some kind of greater conflict? Donald Trump's been talking about that last night.
Yes, he has. He's had some choice words for President Joe Biden. He blames him. And you could argue that there has been quite a change in our relationship, well, with America's relationship with Iran. Have decisions made by Joe Biden left us more unsafe, or is President Trump talking rubbish? We'll get to the bottom of it.
And have you seen that extraordinary clip? We played it earlier of President Biden talking gibberish. Even by his standards, it's gibberish. It's really disturbing.
Yeah, it is hard to make sense of what he is saying half the time.
I think it will
no one can deny that.
People will be looking very seriously if Kamala Harris is picked as Biden's running mate. Almost as much attention should be on her as Joe Biden. And it seems cruel to say, it seems almost inappropriate to say, but frankly, that is how American voters will be feeling it. It does have huge reverberations around the UK as well. Something else that does is the government's announcement on smoking and vaping today. This peculiar iterative ban on smoking. We're the only country in the world now that has committed to this after the New Zealand pulled out back on theirs.
I just think, you know, should they go the whole hog and just ban smoking altogether? They're getting pretty close. Would people at home actually support an outright ban on smoking? Goes against my libertarian instincts. Goes against my libertarian instincts, but a lot of people out there would like to see it banned.
They've been sort of building up to this ever since the smoking ban in, what was it, 2007? Ever since then, and they were like, oh no, it's fine, we're just going to say we're going to ban it indoors in public spaces. And then, oh, it's fine, we're just going to ban it for people who are born after 2009. And oh no, now we're just going to... It's this ratcheting up effect. I think we are heading towards.
We're going to be speaking to a couple of people who have very strong opinions on that from both sides.
Did either of you ever smoke?
A little bit socially. I'm on the vape.
Oh, are you?
Yes, but not a disposable vape.
What flavour?
Just plain.
Oh, OK.
None of this sugary stuff.
Does it taste like nicotine then? It tastes like a cigarette?
A little bit, but less so.
Right.
I'm so boring.
Did you never smoke, Tom?
I've never smoked.
I shouldn't admit to that, really, should I?
I did smoke, but
do you know what? Just to spite Rishi, I might take up vaping.
What about fasting?
Not intermittent fasting.
For 36 hours.
I saw you were talking about a starving Sunak.
Yeah.
It would be though. 36 hours. I couldn't do that.
Well, we've
I
been
don't
doing
want him to make decisions when he's had no food or nutrients for 30 hours.
But it can make you feel sort of poised for action. It's your caveman instinct, isn't it?
Maybe.
Once you're hungry, you're going to go out and kill a woolly mammoth, Tom.
No.
I can see you doing that.
I don't know if this is an appropriate comparison to make, but Enoch Powell would always drink a lot of water before a speech.
Right.
So that he needed to relieve himself. He believed that would make him much more...
on the ball.
Primed and ready for
action. In his delivery of speeches.
So how about you don't go to the loo before our show, and let's see what happens.
Right, OK, that is Tom and Emily this afternoon with Good Afternoon Britain. We didn't know it was going to go in that direction, did we? Right, let's see what we've got. We're taking a quick break. Take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. We're going to talk about not going to the toilet.
Rishi the caveman.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
11:40 with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner. We were supposed to see Just Stop Oil, but guess what? Not being very bright, they've gone to the wrong studio. So hopefully they've glued their horrible protesters to another studio.
But if you
They
are
won't be
watching Listen, these kind of things happen to all of us, so don't worry. I know you're very in demand for the media.
We wanted to talk to them about the mad decision to throw
tomorrow.
pumpkin soup at the Mona Lisa in the Louvre.
Yeah.
That soup could have gone to homeless people.
Come on tomorrow and see us then. We'll send you a little map.
Pumpkin soup, yeah, upmarket. They're only upmarket, you know.
Now.
Just of one. Not Heinz tomato, you know.
Let's move on. Matthew Laza, Emma Wolf will be with you in just a moment because we want to talk about the pavement parking crackdown which has begun.
And it started in Edinburgh, where you're going to be face a £100 fine for parking under pavements. This is a new rule which comes in today, and they're also going to... The same thing's going to happen, I think, in Birmingham.
So these rules are designed to protect pedestrians, particularly those in wheelchairs, but they've come under fire as some are worried it could cause problems for emergency service vehicles. Liverpool is looking to follow Edinburgh's lead as well. A problem, it says, blights everyone's lives, which is probably a little bit of an exaggeration.
Yeah.
That's probably from a local councillor.
Yeah, Liverpool, not Birmingham, forgive me.
Yeah, joining us now is our North West of England reporter, Sophie Reaper. Sophie, is this issue of parking on the pavement genuinely blighting everyone's lives up north?
Well, I'm not sure about blighting, but it's certainly been controversial for a number of years now. Pedestrians arguing, of course, that it's affecting their accessibility on pavements, whereas some drivers will argue that often they're left with no other choice, especially in residential areas like this one. Now, the only place in the UK where it's currently against the law to park on the pavement is down in London. It's been that way since 1974. However, local authorities are now being granted more and more the ability to crack down on these issues. You mentioned there Edinburgh, as of today, that £100 fine for drivers being put in place, or £50 if they can pay it within the first 14 days. But there's now Liverpool. They're making a petition. They've been speaking to the government to try and get more powers, and that's because between April and December of last year, over 100,000 drivers in Liverpool alone were fined for poor parking. So they are now petitioning the government to be given more powers independently here in the city of Liverpool to try and crack down on this issue. We've been here this morning speaking to local residents, trying to find out if they would welcome potential fines for pavement parking, and this is what they had to say.
I don't think you should park on a pavement because it's not fair if you've got a child in a pushchair or you're disabled or something. So, yeah, I don't think you should park on a pavement.
If somebody's got a pram and somebody's parked on the pavement, 9 times out of 10, they're 3/4 on the way of the pavement and you can't get through. Wheelchairs, same. It's just, some people are just so selfish.
I think a car obstructs the pedestrian walkway, so I'd welcome a fine, yeah.
I think with some of the streets are very narrow and people think they can park on, but if you've got a pram with a little one on and maybe a little junior one on, it's hard to get. You've got to go on the road and go round the cars and get back, and that, I think that's dangerous.
Well, there you have it. It does seem to be pretty unanimous. Everyone in Liverpool that we've spoken to this morning seeming to suggest that they would welcome fines for parking on pavements because of the accessibility issues that it presents.
OK, thank you very much, Sophie. Sophie Reaper there in a rather wet and rainy north of England. Matthew Laza, Emma Wolf. This story for me is just more about clamping down on cars, actually, and making it even more difficult. I'm looking at people in the rain there. Matthew, we need to be able to drive our cars.
Well, we do need to be able to drive our cars, but we need to be able to... Pedestrians need to be able to get where they're going, especially with wheelchairs and buggies. So I'm afraid I'm with the good people in Liverpool in saying I think it's a good idea where it's needed, and I think that's a good... I'm against blanket things. So if in Edinburgh has got a particular problem, then, OK, let's Edinburgh introduce it, and then let's hold the local politicians in Edinburgh to account for it if it doesn't work.
It's a money-making scheme, though, isn't it?
It is. They do use drivers as cash cows. I mean, look, why can't we have a slightly more nuanced approach where we say, look, emergency vehicles, of course they get an exemption. Let's be sensible. Yeah. Of course they should be able to park right up on the pavement wherever they need to go in order to get to an emergency. But there are some roads in which you almost can't get through. There are going to be smaller residential roads. Can't we have a case-by-case basis? This is ludicrous. And as for London, we need to crack down on e-bikes being strewn all over the pavements, all over the streets, just anywhere. anywhere. These are company names on these bikes.
These lime green
and they
ones.
are abandoned anywhere, and I just think companies need to go and collect them and put them back in the docking bays.
Yeah.
And we're getting more of them.
Yeah, more of them.
And they're spreading across the country as well.
Seem to be
So watch out, it's coming to your town.
They are a pest.
They are a pest. But talking of travel, we've got a massive train strike on today, Emma, and it's barely really...
Well, it's all week.
We're so fatigued, thank you, by strikes. We barely even mention them anymore.
This is 18 operators are going to be on strike throughout the week, rolling strikes. Only none of those 18 companies are implementing the 40% minimum service that they should be implementing.
Brought in by the government only last year.
What, are they just going to flout it?
Yeah.
It just seems ludicrous. The strikes are going to be affecting the entire network. Meanwhile, at places like London Bridge and major mainline stations in London, we have rainbow flags, we have demi-romantics flags, gender fluidity and polyamory flags.
What is a polyamory flag?
It means you love many people, poly being many and amory.
But why do we need a flag for that? Network Rail are celebrating this kind of gender nonsense when they should just be running our trains.
What's the point of a polyamory flag?
What is the point? Andrew,
polyamory flag, Andrew.
Tell me you feel better.
You're not on trend, Andrew.
No, I'm not, and I'm thrilled to be off trend. Polyamory, I've never heard of it. It's another nonsense creation by
it doesn't exist. No,
your
I mean,
generation.
I wish I was the generation that invented it. I'm glad you think I'm young enough. But polyamory is people now live in relationships with more than one person.
Well, that's been going on for years.
Throuples.
It used to be called polygamy.
Yes,
you were married.
And it's now polyamory because to make it sound more romantic.
They don't get married anymore.
And what's the other one?
Demi-romantics, gender fluidity.
What's that?
That means that you'll only date people that you feel a sort of intellectual connection with. I'm not responsible, I'm just defining it.
Well, but listen, while you're waiting for your train, you can feel better because they are celebrating these on flags all over the country, all over the network.
At vast expense.
But these train strikes, Matthew, I mean, you know, my teenage daughters were talking this morning about the fact they can't get home from school this afternoon because there's no trains. And I don't know how to explain to them
what's going on.
I don't know how to tell them on a dark winter's night.
Yeah, no, it's got to be a complete mess, and then particularly the union's doing this rolling strike, so you never quite know. It's ASLEF, Train Drivers Union. The train drivers are relatively well paid.
Yeah,
65,000 is the minimum.
4-day week.
They do a lot of compulsory, sort of non-compulsory overtime, but without that, then that's when you have the overtime bans and you have effect services. But the government needs to sit down with the unions, and we need to get this sorted. The minimum service level thing is interesting because I had lunch with somebody on Saturday from the rail industry, a friend of mine, and he says that the rail industry has had to spend millions on a legal battle with the Department of Transport because they physically can't do the minimum level of strikes because they don't know how to force people back to work. So they've been trying to tell the government they can't do it. So it's a total mess.
What happened to strong management?
And meanwhile, the rail...
Well, they're spending money on not being strong management.
They're getting their huge bonuses. It's fine. They're getting massive bonuses for all this absolute chaos.
Don't you just despair?
I do despair.
I mean, get the trains working, Prime Minister. Stop banging on about...
That's why you need a Labour government.
Well,
I thought I'd get that in.
But this next story, actually, is why ASLEF aren't that powerful anymore, why it's dropping off the headlines. It's because, Emma, people are working from home.
Yeah.
How much?
We're insisting upon this. I think whenever we talk about working from home, I just always want to be mindful of all the people who do regular, hard work, hard jobs, like real things, digging up the roads and...
That you can't do from home.
And carers and shop workers and builders, and they can't work from home. So we have to be aware this is talking about, you know, nice office workers, mostly comfortable jobs where people are insisting upon this, and they're actually having, you know, legal battles about...
Yeah, there's been a legal case this week. There was a tribunal that reported at the end of last week where a woman who works for the Financial Conduct Authority requested to work from home permanently, 100% of the time. They said no. She took them to a tribunal, and the tribunal sided with the employer and said no, she couldn't. She didn't have a right to work from home all the time. But guess how the tribunal was heard? No irony. Online.
No.
Absolutely.
That's ironic.
I have to say, I mean, I have been banging this drum, actually, for decades, way before COVID. I was talking about the fact that particularly people with young children should be, where possible, accommodated to have a little flexibility in their working week, because you will retain them as your staff, they will be happier, and they will stay with your company for longer and do a good job.
It's true, and, you know, I think effective people will work from home effectively, and people that just hang around the water cooler and, you know, mostly just sit around and chat will be messing around at home as well, so I think it's right. You're right.
Found out.
About... Yeah, of course. It's about retaining the...
With your polyamorous friends.
I'm actually blushing now.
Should we just do this really depressing
to bring them on next week.
This depressing story, actually, but we've been trailing it about football violence. Matthew, what happened at the weekend?
Yeah,
so this is
the Midlands clash, West Midlands clash between West Brom and Wolves, and violence broke out. And I don't know if anybody's heard it, but I thought this was a thing of the past. Remember when in the 80s football commentators were also news reporters, because they used to have to, rather than just commentating on who was going to score the goal, they were having to commentate on what was going on in the stands, who'd invaded, who'd come off over the thing. And it's extraordinary if you hear the guy commentating going, and you know they're over the thing, the police are trying to gain control. And I thought the days were behind this. It looks like the FA may impose a serious fine, but I'm not sure that's going to solve the problem.
We saw images of young men with masks on. Take the masks off.
So I think the first thing is don't let them in if you can't see the face.
Exactly.
That's a pretty easy start.
And if they put them on while they're in the match, the stewards should get them out. Yeah. That should be a simple rule.
Really but they'll just say they're scared of COVID and they have to have a mask on.
Too bad.
They're outside.
This was not family entertainment. A man was led across the pitch. Blood was pouring from his head.
Shocking.
The fans were shouting, "Let him die! Let him die!" This is really, really.
Is this the game that is known as the beautiful game, Emma?
Yes.
Emma's the biggest football fan on the panel.
Yeah,
so.
but this is the beautiful game. But this violence, well, look, they could have done. I think they could have done better. This is a fixture that's notoriously kind of tense.
Local derby.
Yeah, it's the West Country derby, isn't it? And
West Midlands.
West Midlands derby, and. You know, it's kind of given... It's like there's a licence for this to kick off. But there's... Even on the way there, at train stations and stuff, there was trouble, there was drinking.
Alcohol, it's a lot of it.
But we're seeing this massive increase in violence everywhere at the moment, Matthew, and there's something in the air. It's not just about drinking.
I think it's actually all part of this kind of feeling that the country is kind of going in the wrong direction.
People are frustrated.
People are frustrated, and people don't feel the rules are being imposed. So, I mean, in the 80s, there was a pretty hard response, you know, dry trains where alcohol was banned, which is still used sometimes, but clearly needs to be used more widely. And, I mean, you know, in the 80s, football was Mrs Thatcher, who was no football fan, was pretty firm on the game. I'm not saying we should go back to those days, but we shouldn't just sort of... we shouldn't take the foot off the gas in terms of being vigilant about
Sometimes, if I'm on a tube going north and there's a big match at Wembley, or perhaps it's Arsenal, I'm not sure, I'm in a certain carriage, you feel like you're in a brewery. The smell of booze off all the lads.
One of the most frightening experiences of my life was on a little two-carriage train in the north with my mum as a kind of 12-year-old, with literally full of football supporters, which is literally, and us, which boozing, which is... I mean, and let's hope we're not going quite back to those days. Did you see more women and families now?
They're all drinking on the tube, which of course is against the rules and against the law, but who is going to tell this 200 blokes not to have a drink?
You got punched at a football match?
When I was 14 or 15.
No wonder you don't like football.
I don't hate it. Tottenham. It was a friendly match. How friendly was that?
Friendly was that?
Swindon Town.
Why don't they just enforce the non-alcohol rule on the London Underground? Oh, because the economist is too busy painting rainbow flags on things.
Yeah,
but it's also... But you know what, as well, cocaine actually is a problem amongst these crowds of young men as well now, not just alcohol, sadly. But there's something in the air, I think. You've seen the stabbings at the weekend. People are frustrated, they're fed up. What else is it, Emma? Why?
I genuinely think, and I know it's a cliche to talk about broken Britain, but I think people are unhappy. Their wages haven't gone up. There's a sense of kind of fracture in any way and dislocation since lockdown. And I think people feel...
And I think since the pandemic as well, there's a sense of sort of, in a sense of lawlessness, a sense that people can get away with things that they couldn't before. And of course, as we were talking about with the knife crime story, masks make a big difference as well. So that's...
And there are no police anywhere. You can do what you want because the police aren't going to pull you up.
You never see them.
No, if you walk through, I mean, it's extraordinary now. If you walk through the centre of London, you know, any other, you're in Piccadilly Circus. There's not a single police officer.
Yeah, I saw some police today outside the London clinic.
Protecting the royals.
Yet if you walk through Paris, you would see armed gendarmes
absolutely,
everywhere.
and every metro station.
Yeah, you're so right.
It's so different here.
It is. It's very different at the moment, and it does feel like these kids get away with it, and... You know, we've got all this football violence as well, kicking off, quite literally. Right, thank you both. Matthew Larzer, Emma Wolf, always good to see you.
Thank you.
We will be back tomorrow morning at 9:30, but that is it from Britain's Newsroom for this morning. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope you stay with us for the rest of the week. Up next, it's Good Afternoon Britain with Tom and Emily. See you tomorrow.
Joe Biden has pushed the world to the brink of World War III. Those were the words of Donald Trump last night. But is he right, or is he anywhere near to the truth? This, of course, as 3 American service personnel were killed in a drone strike in the Middle East.
Yes, indeed. And also, the Rwanda bill is in the House of Lords. It's beginning its journey through the second upper chamber. So, will it be delayed? Will it be derailed? We'll find out.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
I'm Alex Deakin. Welcome to your latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A very wet one today over parts of northern England and Wales. Still very mild in the south, colder further north, but with some brighter skies across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. A bit of a soggy sandwich really today then, if you like. These weather fronts bringing rain across Wales and particularly northern England, where we do have a Met Office yellow warning in place. Not a lot of change through the day. Brightening up a touch over East Anglia and the southeast, and as I said, pretty mild here. Some sunshine over western Scotland and much of Northern Ireland as well. But we are in the colder air here, so temperatures struggling a little bit, 6 or 7 Celsius, whereas we could get to 13 or 14 in the south. Feeling pretty cold with that persistent and at times heavy rain over northern England and much of Wales. That rain will continue well into the evening, slowly easing as we go through the night, certainly turning a bit drier over parts of Wales. Some of that rain will trickle over the Midlands towards East Anglia, staying largely dry and clear over Scotland and Northern Ireland. So a cold night here with a frost for many. Elsewhere, the cloud and the rain and drizzle will keep those temperatures well above freezing. But it does make for another grey start to Tuesday, certainly for northern and eastern parts of England. The rain, though, should continue to peter out. Wales will have a much brighter day. It'll cheer up over northern England through the day. We'll start to see the winds picking up in the far north, however. It's going to get very windy here on Wednesday. Temperatures again, 6s and 7s across the north, 9 or 10 further south.